You have 1,000 problems in life until you have a health problem. Then you only have one. That's the quote Yoshi kept running into. At 24, successful high-stakes online poker player, but chronic insomnia, sleep paralysis every other night, and a stomach that stopped working, but in the same time, a bank account that never looked better. Today we sit down with Yoshi Paco, one of the sharpest players in the game, and he will walk us through one of the most counterintuitive decisions in his career. He stopped battling, he stopped grinding prime times, and instead started to surf 4 days a week and had the best ever year of his career. We talk health versus wealth, how he treats poker like a business and why he thinks it's not a sport at all, and discusses the breakthrough coaching session he had that forever rewired how he thinks about the game. Stay with us, because this one is going to change how you think about EV forever. We present to you high-stakes online cash game player Yoshi Paco Nagaki, aka Play for a Living, on the Mechanics of Poker podcast.
Most players grinding their way to high stakes have one goal: to get to the top. You got there, and from what you described, it's almost like that's where the real problem started for you. Is that fair?
Kind of. I would say there's like a different kind of challenges you face along the way, right? Definitely, you think that whenever you get higher, like it's gonna get easier, right? Because of like expectations about like just, you know, like whenever you get somewhere like money-wise or like you accomplish something, you think it's gonna get like everything solved, but it definitely is not.
What did getting to the top solve for you, and what didn't it solve? When you started to play higher stakes, achieve what you wanted in poker, what was some of the good stuff and what was some of the stuff that were left a bit empty?
I feel like it's not that I had this like idea of feeling empty or like whatever. Like it feels amazing once you're like in the rush of like starting, you know, like getting better, like doing all these things, right? But then like you're actually, or I was not actually like conscious about like all the long-term issues or damages it does to your body to like be under so much pressure, stress, bad sleeping habits, or, you know, like all these things that when you're like really young or something, like you don't really consider, right? You actually think that is like correct, like that's the way. But once you get like to a certain point where you prioritize quality of life, then you start noticing like, oh, like that, I think I'm like leaking a lot here, you know?
When did you get to that point? When was that moment where you started to think about maybe life balance alongside becoming a high-stakes poker player?
Yeah. All right. So I would like to be like honest about it. I was like reacting around like certain illness I have. I had like a lot of severe insomnia. I had this issue of sleep paralysis. It's kind of weird, but it's like it's something that happens a lot when you're like very anxious, and it's awful. Like not only the sensations of like the sleep paralysis or whatever, but also because it kind of messes up with like your sleep afterwards, you know, because you're kind of like, you wake up, like it's like a horrible nightmare, but then like you can't really go back to sleep normally, you know, like you have to settle down, but then obviously like it's all ruined, right? And then it started happening to me a lot. Like I would say like probably it started like 2 times a week, then it started like 3, 4, 5, once to a point where like I was maybe having it every day, you know, like sometimes even multiple times per night. It was like awful, right? And you kind of get used to it, but then you kind of start feeling like, you know, tired, you know, obviously because of having like a really bad night of sleeping. Then it started coming like, so I started going to like to a doctor about this, and it was these like anxious problems, right? Then like we solved it with like some pills, and then it kind of started like going, and you know, like in all this circle of solving that. And then I also had this severe issue with like with my stomach, which is very related, right? Like when you're like anxious and like doing a lot of stuff, like your nervous system affect a lot of your sleep and your digestive system, right? So I was having like, chronic diarrhea. It's awful to say. Like, I was having that shit. It's awful. I was having that for years, you know, and you kind of get used to it. But again, like, you know, like, it's like you obviously, there's like a lot of like the lack of energy when you're having like not your nutrients going the way they should and stuff like that. If you had like the sleeping problems, right? And yeah, it all add up, right? At start, it's not like a big deal. You kind of like, oh, okay, whatever. Like I'll solve it with some pills. Like I'll solve it with, whatever. But then because I was always like pushing more towards poker and like getting better at that, like getting smarter, like optimizing everything else besides my health for some reason, right? But then I would say, okay, so going back to the original question, around 3-4 years ago, once it got like really bad, and I was already taking like a lot of pills for everything, and it was like, oh, this is not the way it should go. I'm like really young. Like right now I'm 28, and when I noticed it was like 24, 25, and I was doing everything else correctly, right? I was eating healthy. I was doing like some exercise, like whatever, but these two issues that were related to like my cortisol levels and stress was like a big issue, right? And I needed to start like changing my whole life around it.
Yeah, so I think we can frame this as like chronic stress for you and like all the symptoms you're experiencing. And I'm sure a lot of poker players can relate to how stressful it is, especially if you're playing high stakes and the amounts are crazy amounts of money, life changing, you're in a high performance environment always, and your body's responding to this kind of threat signals that you're facing at the poker tables. And if you can't switch that off, it becomes these kind of symptoms of the kind of the stomach, or it can be the whole body gets overloaded, which can lead to doctors struggling to diagnose you with anything, give you some pills, good luck on your way. So it can be a very big challenge. So for you, what were some of the things you started to do to kind of deal with, one, still being a high stakes poker player, but then starting to really tackle this kind of chronic stress head on? What were some of the changes you have to make?
Well, as you say, right, like financially was going like really good, like I felt really accomplished, everything started like to click in a way of like what I wanted to be in my life when I was young, right? Or when I started playing poker. But then at the same time, I felt like very frustrated, right? Because I was not feeling healthy, like I was tired overall, like I could play poker every time, like, it was getting worse, whatever. I didn't have like the energy or like I don't know how to say this, like the goodwill to be like in a good mood with my friends and family, like all this stuff, like, and it starts like a vicious circle, right? Which is like, really negative, I would say. So yeah, I think what you say of like the chronic stress, also like my personality, like I'm always pushing towards like being better, like optimizing everything, like my mind is like always pushing and learning. I'm very curious about everything. So it's kind of a good tool once like you want to be achieving something, like I'm very grateful for like what I am on, like it definitely helped me a lot through the start and the middle of my career. But then once you get to a point where like, it's not about getting more maybe, or like, it's more about like actually getting, or stabilizing the other areas of my life to enjoy, the work and everything else.
Yeah, it reminds me of a quote that says, you have 1,000 problems in life until you have health problems, then you only have one problem. And it's that thing where we make trade-offs with what we're doing, how we're trying to achieve our goals. And then our health suffers and we're like, right, health matters more than all of it, because how I feel in my body, my subjective experience is the one thing that matters more than all of the rest of it. So yeah, in terms of like the things that you've been doing recently to rebalance it, I think now you're in a much better place. You feel like you've got that kind of vibrancy for life back. What were some of the big changes you made? What were some of the things that had the biggest impact on you in terms of getting to a healthy place?
So I started like doing the same thing I did with like poker and like everything else. I wanted to get better. It was just like getting all the information I could, like gather all the information like about what was exactly the root of my, like the main of my, the issues. And it was all about like, it all come down to like minimizing cortisol, right? And it all includes like getting like really good sleep, prioritizing that over, I don't know, like getting great tables during nighttime. Like, for example, like going to like relating it to poker, right? Like in the past, if I got really good tables in the night, which is usually good for my time zone, right? For Peruvian time zone, night times are like, rates are ridiculously better. Then like for years, I would like grind during the night or midnight or whatever, because it was actually really good. But then now I'm like grinding the worst times. Like I'm grinding during the day, during like, prime time Europe, which is obviously the worst. But then I don't care anymore, like I'm prioritizing like having really good sleep, I'm prioritizing like shorter sessions. Sometimes like I have really good table, but then I know I'm feeling tired, so I'll stop. Like I know I'm past like 2 hours or something and I'm starting to feel like dizzy, like I don't feel motivated anymore. I know that financially it's obviously a good decision to stay playing, but I know like overall for like EV of my life, or to put it like that, as a human being, it's definitely better to just rest, do something else, So that's one thing. Then also like being more strict about like food, all this stuff. But then also like in relationships with my friends and family, like putting good limits, like not really doing what sometimes I don't want, like putting limits in general, to be like under less stress for like dumb decisions. And also something that really helped me a lot, and I'm really grateful and kind of addicted now, is like surfing. Like I surf now like 4 or 5 times a week, maybe more sometimes when there's like a really good swell. It changed my life a lot because it connected with me because I have this sort of personality where I need to focus onto something, like get better. And surfing, when you learn as a novel and in general, like it's really hard. Like it's really, 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 really hard. I don't think I've ever learned something that's as hard as this. It's also really rewarding because the dopamine you get from like doing these sports and actually riding a wave and like being in the nature and like, I don't think I've ever felt something like that, to be honest. Like it's just so, like it's such a rush, but at the same time, it's like a rush that feels correct. It's not like going through like scrolling on Instagram or like doing anything that gives you instant gratification. It's actually complete. Like you actually feel like blessed. I know it sounds like I'm not really much of a spiritual person, a little bit, but that's the word. Like actually surfing got me more connected to this part of me because I actually feel blessed every time I do that. Like it's so good. It's so in general, like doing more sports, all this stuff. Like sleeping well, like it's all the balances, that like if you actually take time, as in poker, to like fix your leaks, I would say, like if you want to fix everything, like you're gonna start like looking in every area if you actually want to optimize that, and that's exactly what I did.
How did you think about EV previously? You said that now you think about EV more in health. I'm curious how it was before that.
I would say the process is like really similar. It's just the weight you put to like good sleep, being in a good mood, or like, like having energy in general, or, or reducing stress is just like heavier now than before. Before it was more like, okay, so I'm young, like I have these skills. I've been working a lot for this. I need to focus and, monetize it, like actually like do it, and obviously, like I enjoy it. I enjoy a lot playing poker as well. Like I love it. It's amazing. It's a great game. I'm really grateful as well. At the same time, it's a business, right? And about the EV wise, as you said, like it's just before I would like put more like sacrifice of my health into making more profits, and then now it's not like that.
You mentioned also that you had to lower cortisol now. In my experience in playing poker, cortisol kind of goes, all over the places. So in general, like also you mentioned, like your brain is great. And I can definitely relate, right? You see, I can optimize this, I can optimize that. And sometimes like I get a bit tired, if every area of your life you approach it that way. Yeah. How much do you think like the problems you were experiencing were directly related to how you were approaching poker?
Looking backwards, I would say I would love to blame it all to poker, so I would like have less responsibility around it, but obviously not, right? Like it also like a lot. You learn a lot with aging. Like I'm 28. I feel like really old school, man. I've lived a lot. Like I actually lived a lot. Like I've played poker since I was underage. I've done so many stuff. Like I really feel old school at this point. So I would guess like aging in general, like you kind of know your weaknesses, or your, like it's in poker, your leaks, you kind of know how to plug them. You kind of know where you fuck up, like where you like, and then sometimes you just learn to like let it go, you know, like whatever. But then, yeah, I think maturing is a great part also of like learning how to deal with all this stress. But obviously, the poker thing is just a big deal as well, right? Like as Adam said, right? Like making big decisions for money, being wrong, being right, whatever. All this rush of like winning, losing, playing for a lot of money. Like I don't know. It definitely affects. I would even say that I think I used to play even bigger before, like a couple years before. Maybe we'll talk more about it later, but that was definitely like the most exciting period of my poker career, but the most stressful as well. So I think finding a balance where like, okay, I can, you know, play this and like be comfy but I'm not wasting my time. You know what I'm saying? Like I can make good money here. Like, for me, I will play this. I'll put all my effort here. It's not boring, but it's not gonna, you know, affect my sleep basically.
You mentioned like very important to lower cortisol. How does one lower cortisol while playing? What kind of changes did you make in maybe your mindset or perspective to try to keep that as low as possible? I'm sure, you know, there's many tilters in our audience that would like to learn from your experience.
So, I mean, in general, I've never been a tilter, even since I was like starting. Like, I guess there's a lot of my formation as a person in general due to my parents. They're amazing. I'm really grateful for this education like I've received. So, in that sense, I would say that naturally, because obviously, like I also teach poker and all, I have a lot of poker players that are friends, and I can tell the difference between me and the majority. And there's like I can sense it, but sometimes I don't know how to like explain it. It just doesn't get me, maybe into my emotions, but it does get me to like internally. You know what I'm saying? Like it is like obviously like affects me like in some way that maybe I wasn't so aware before, right? Maybe that's a big thing as well. Maybe I was not externalizing it, but it was more like internal, you know? Anyways, but nowadays, into the tables, right? Like I try to put me into like less uncertainty, right? In terms of like, I know that every time I play, I'm going to be into like a good spot, like a profitable spot. Like I'm really aware of like all the sites, you know, like all the games that are running, like I scan all the lobbies before, you know, and I'm like trying to make my best decision into like, okay, so I'm going to play this. These are the games I'm going to play. If I play, I have to be like 90% sure that I'm beating these games for like a decent win rate. That helps a lot for sure, because, you know, like there's less uncertainty, as I said. I would say as well, like playing stakes, you are like really comfortable as well. Like maybe being overrolled for a lot helps a lot, and playing shorter sessions also helps, you know, because for me at least, like I can tell that whenever I cross a limit of like certain amount of time, my body is it just feels heavy, you know, dizzy. Like I can feel my arms weak or whatever. Like these sort of like physical sensations that before I thought it was like normal. Now I am aware, oh shit, like this is wrong. Like I'm starting to feel weak. Like this is not the way I want to feel. So let's stop.
Yeah, it's like a level of fatigue, right? It reminds me actually a bit of football. Like you injure yourself. Well, if you've already been playing for an hour and you get fatigued, that's when your posture changes. That's when you injure yourself. I would say it's kind of maybe similar to poker. And actually also funny what you said before. Like you kind of saw outside, oh, these like tilt guys, they have the problem. But maybe because you were not letting it out, it doesn't mean that, you know, cortisol's there, right? The stress, you might just be suppressing it. Maybe Adam can also jump in there. I'm curious, Adam, like letting go versus keeping it in.
Yeah, it's an interesting one. So the stress response plays out in different ways in different people. So if you look at like, say you're playing poker, we're all monitoring ourselves with WHOOP data or some sort of stress response. Some of us will be mediumly stressed. Some of us will be high stress. Some of our heart rates will be 160. Some will be like less than 100. So how we're responding to stimulus changes. However, the stress response is quite universal in terms of cortisol in the bloodstream, adrenaline in the bloodstream, how you use that cortisol and how well you are at buffering stress. By that I mean having stress high in the body and then low want that stress at some point, some sort of outlet to let that stress out for the body to downregulate is super important. So for Yoshi, finding surfing, nature, kind of get those rebalancing away from the tables seems very important. Other people can buffer stress in the environment of playing poker or like small breaks. So I think the main thing is to realize poker is going to be stressful. You're putting yourself into a high stress environment. You need to find balances to let the nervous system correct itself. If not, the nervous system is always firing, always on, which means it can't recover. Immune system gets downregulated and you're chronically stressed. And then with that, just any symptom you can think of that could happen, can happen, as Yoshi's experienced, in terms of symptoms of body, energy, fatigue, nervous system issues. So yeah, you're going to run into a lot of problems. Yeah, I think it's just trying to find that balance for yourself in terms of how you respond to stress. And if poker for you is very stressful, like Yoshi mentions, that you're noticing physical changes as you're playing, oh great, you've noticed stress has got to a peaking point. Okay, I need to lower that stress actively, get away from the tables, and find that rebalancing point. So yeah, I think it's a very important topic for all poker players to think about, and to start thinking about how you're managing your own stress throughout your grind, but also throughout your life. You mentioned as well, a lot of things came up when you were speaking, and I was thinking about the kind of the health for wealth trade-off that almost all poker players make at some point. So for you right now, you're sitting at the high stakes, and it's very, I'm not saying easy, but it's much easier to go, all right, I will leave money on the table, and I'll prioritize health. And I think a lot of ambitious players will be coming up going, yeah, when I get to Yoshi's level, then I will also balance myself. But in the meantime, I'll kill myself, and I'll do whatever I need to make money, because your identity is tied to making money in poker, being your self-worth, that you want to prove yourself. And I'm thinking back to myself as a 24, 25-year-old. I did Supernova Elite Volume. I did it 330 days of the year, 10 hours a day, to hit this magic number to unlock the jackpot. And I thought it was the best use of my time in the world. Looking back, I would never do that again. But as an ambitious 23, 24-year-old, it seemed like the best choice in the world. So for yourself, let's say if we could go back to you at 23, 24, you still haven't got the success you want in poker, and you today was speaking to him, do you think he would listen? Do you think he'd find that way to balance his life in terms of health first over trying to seek wealth?
Yeah, so there's a lot going on your question. I will first start with like, if I have to go to my younger self and like tell him, okay, so you need to do it this better, right? I think I will definitely do it. I think that sacrificing yourself, right? You can definitely do it, and you definitely like, if you have to be, or you want to excel at something, you definitely have to do like a lot, right? More than the rest. I'm not saying that, like definitely there's a lot of hard work that you need to do. But I think there's a lot of ego in general in the poker world, where like they see poker, I don't know how to put it, but they don't see it like as a business, I would say, right? Or as mission, I like to frame it. I would like to tell with my experience now to myself when I was 18 or 19, like, okay, so this is the framework, right? You definitely need to get better, right? But this is where you need to work. This is where you need to put the volume. This is where you need to put the hours, right? Like, yes, you need to sacrifice a lot of stuff, but maybe, just maybe, like find better ways to do it, smarter ways to like not kill yourself, like, you know what I'm saying? Like put a lot of time, but put the time on like things that will make you kill yourself less. You know what I'm saying? Like in terms of like getting better. Okay, examples like if you need to study, okay, find the right way, find like maybe find your own path, but like learn from people you actually want to become. This is something I always done. Like if I want to get better, like who do I admire? Who do I think is where I want to be, right? So I try to understand what that person is doing so I can try to emulate it, right? And like that, and then the financial stuff, I would say, and maybe that's like in general for poker players and not just for young, but a lot for young people as well. Like a lot of people is just wasting a lot of time playing poker, like unbeatable games, really bad games, playing like low win rates, and it's just gonna take them way more time to get where they want to be. Because there's like a really positive cycle, I would say, or like really good things come once you start winning more, right? Like you get more motivated to grind more, to study more, to play bigger, right? Your bankroll goes up, your I don't know how to say this word in English, like self-care, like a lot of stuff goes up once, like, I'm not saying like a short upswing, but in general, like if you have like you know, like if everything starts going better, right, or feels easier, like it's just gonna click faster. You know what I'm saying? So to summarize it, I would say focus a lot on like getting better, but at the same time, just don't torture yourself, like you said, like playing Zoom as I also did, or like playing, like, you know, like understand poker as a business, not only getting better as a poker player, which is a tool, like is a part of how to win money, but you play poker not to beat the other players. You, or for me, like how I see it is you play poker because you want to make money. You want to make more money, right? So ask yourself, what's the best way to make more money instead of, you know, like getting better? Yes, it's part of it. It's a big part of it, but there's also like a big part of like game selection, time zone, you know, maybe all stuff that like most people just don't really care or don't focus, you know?
Yeah, I think the challenge that many players experience is the kind of conflict between short-term goals and long-term goals. So in the short term, it always makes sense to sacrifice yourself, always makes sense to cut a night's sleep out, to play extra tables, go longer if you think you're a winner playing those games. But once you extrapolate that to months, to years, all of a sudden those trade-offs you're making start to become negative in terms of sustainability, enjoyment, performance. I think a lot of players who are in a rush to have success, to get to the top, to achieve something, struggle to like slow things down enough to go, wait a second, this might get me a little bit of a head start. And it's like it's not a marathon and sprint in the first 100 meters, so in the lead after 100 meters going, hey guys, I'm in the lead. Then everyone runs past you after a mile and you're like, oh damn, these guys are still going, and you've kind of stopped for a break. I think often in life, people make a lot of short-term sacrifices that don't add up to their long-term goals. So yeah, I think it's a real good conversation to have around understanding yourself, what's sustainable. If I look at players who have a lot of longevity in poker, they always find a lot of enjoyment on the pursuit. They're not the guys killing themselves. They are obviously going through periods where they work very intensely, but they don't sacrifice themselves, because at some point you sacrifice yourself, who's going to show up if you're a mess on the floor, burnt out, nothing left to give? And I always feel like every goal requires an energy trade-off. So if you want to achieve a goal, there's an energy that needs to be met to achieve that goal. So if you've got no energy because you're pushing things too hard for too long, at some point you can't achieve your goals because you can't show up in the way you need to get those goals. So yeah, I think it's a really good conversation to talk about how to balance stress, how to balance your energy levels, how to make some kind of trade-offs in terms of health over maybe chasing goals in the short term to allow yourself to perform well for your career for a long time and enjoy it. As you mentioned, like we'll talk a bit more about, but finding your enjoyment of life. I know surfing's been a big part of that, but I think it's really important to realize it doesn't have to start after poker, your enjoyment of life. You can find that kind of balance on the pursuit.
I think also, don't you also think, like we talk about sacrificing health, wealth, but in the end, always in like even in the semi-long term, prioritizing health will always increase your wealth. Only in the very short term, if you, let's say you have a great game and you play one night through a great game, obviously I can see that contribute to your wealth. But if you do that all the time, then in the long term, your wealth is not going to go up. Prioritizing your health would always go hand in hand with your wealth also going up, in my opinion. Actually, I recall I would sometimes, like in the past, when I was like grinding seriously 9 to 5, I was very similar to Yoshi in that matter. I also grinded the worst times, simply because I prioritized other things as well. And then it was 5 o'clock, and I had a good game, and I would leave, and then someone would send me on Skype, how do you leave this game? I'm like, yeah, well, if I now continue for an hour, I kind of fuck up my schedule. I want to go to the gym now, chill with the wifey after. And the next day, 9 o'clock, we're back at it. Whereas I noticed if I would push 1 more hour, 2 more hours, I would be more irritated. Let's say I would then lose. I'd be like, fuck, I should have just kicked my schedule, blah, blah, blah. And then, like, long term, it was just not contributing to it. So maybe in a vacuum, that hour would be indeed high hourly. But if that would mean it would fuck up my next day of grinding, it's obviously not more plus I remember a friend of mine, he would kind of have this rule. Okay, this is like the cutting point. I'm going to stop around this hour. Unless I estimate that my hourly is like 3x and I can play 2 or 3 hours more. But then he would always take the next day off. So it would be like, okay, I realized that now I make like 3x of what I normally make. So it makes sense to continue. But the next day I take off and reset. And then afterwards I pick up my routine. I think that's a great way of both optimizing the wealth in the short term, but also considering the health, right? You cannot then just go back to the next day and pretend like that didn't happen.
Answer both, right? Like I'll first start with you, Rene. I usually try to like put it like rationalize things, like my decisions. So what I do is like, is it worth it to me to stay longer for winning this amount in EV. Like, let's say I have like a really good table. I don't know, like, is it worth it to me to stay, like, sacrifice whatever I want to do, whatever it is, like it's doing sports or doing something social or like whatever it has to be. Like, is it worth for me to stay for, I don't know, like the opportunity cost of like winning $400 per hour or 500 or 600 or whatever it is, right? Like whatever the situation is. Like I've been on the spots where I'm like, okay, maybe I'll play another hour because it's been like ridiculous, like actual ridiculous, right? I'm not talking even 2 or 3 times my usual hour. Like, like sometimes in high stakes, like you get like on the higher end of your buy-ins, like, you get like really massive games that is like really good. And it's like, okay, maybe it's worth it, right? But it's usually not the case, right? So I try to rationalize it that way, like to make my decision easier for me to say, okay, so I made the best decision. So it's not like I have like a hard stop, but it usually is because it's usually not worth it,
Nowadays, right?
Nowadays, yeah. I would say before, like maybe, like if before I would know like the consequences of it, I would definitely like, but you don't think about it once you are not in the problem or once you're like young and like, even if I was like sleeping wrong or whatever, like I would still like feel okay to play, you know what I'm saying? But then like, obviously like it gets getting worse and worse, whatever. About the trade-off, that Adam said, right? I would say that it takes the first some time to realize and be honest with yourself. What is what you want from your life and what do you want from the game to your life? So there's a lot of people that I know that actually play like for fame. I don't know. Like, they want to become like, especially like in terms, whatever, like they want to become accomplished, well known, they don't know even if the rate is high. They don't know the ROI. They don't know anything. They just want to, battle, and they have this idea. And I'm okay, man. Like you want to become the best player. Okay, go ahead, and they work through it. Then there's people that I know that only thinks about money or whatever. Like they will only think like to optimize it. Doesn't matter if they don't sleep, whatever. And that's what they work for them. Like, I don't know, maybe they don't know, but I think being honest with yourself take time, to actually digest it and like, okay, so I don't know, maybe this is way too much to say, but for me, like I made like a financial plan for my whole life. Like how much money do I actually need to have like a really good life, plan? Obviously you never know, right? But in general, okay, so I'm aiming towards this. So now how many hours do I need to work like towards this or whatever? Like, okay, so now I can like have this leisure time or whatever. Do I need to play way higher, to feel better with myself? Okay, for me, not. Like, do I need to battle, 100Ks? I don't know, whatever it is. Like, do I need to battle that to feel better with myself? Happily not. So, I don't know, like, it doesn't matter to me. Like, I would rather be with my friends. I'd rather be with my family. I'd rather be, just sleeping well, eating good food and like enjoying life. I would rather do that instead of, other stuff. But that's me. And it definitely doesn't, it's not the formula for everyone, but I think the decision-making process should be similar to everyone. Like, be honest with yourself, and it can be flexible, right? Like, I'll never know what my priorities will be next year or 2 years or 5 years. Like, for me, it's always been changing, but I think that's a good start.
I guess you need to know for yourself what your definition of the best poker player is, right? Because everyone wants to kind of become the best poker player, but who's the best poker player? Is it the guy who battles the most, who's the toughest to play against, who ends up making the most money? What is the best, right? And kind of what you said, for you, it seems to be like trying to become the best player doesn't have anything to do with status or battling people. No, for you, like you said, you have this map, you have a financial goal. Poker can fulfill a lot of other things in your life. What was this always the case, or was there a time where, you had your army cap on and you were like, I'm gonna kind of fuck everyone up, a bit more of the battling spirit?
Yeah. So I would say when I first started, right, when I was like underage, when I was 17 or 18, Like I was already playing like 50 NL, 100 NL maybe. I don't know. I think I already started beating Sun 200 when I was 18. And I don't know, I was like an ADHD kid that came from like video games. I just wanted, the rush and like, what Adam said, like my identity was like, okay, I want to be someone, that people respect or, have all these like, that happens. You said like, maybe it comes, maybe it was for me younger than for other people, but yes. So for a while, I would say, I don't know if Zoom 200 at the time, like it was battling, like, but for me it was, like all this idea of not game selecting, just playing against players. I didn't even know what the Rake was playing. I don't know anything. I just know that I want to be better and like improving and all this stuff, right? So yeah, I had that, but then I had this like click when I was like 20 or 21. I can't remember, when I saw other players that. It might sound bad, but I knew they weren't as good as me, and they were playing higher, right? Like they were not playing like Zoom. They were not playing anything. They were just game selecting and like apps or playing any games, and they were playing like 500, 1K, 2K. And for me, those stakes were like really high. And to me, like I always only play like poker stars, right? Like it was like every game was hard or whatever. I was like, and then I was like, oh, there's another world where like people are actually like not great and you can still make a lot of money, and then I was like, it opened my mind, I would say. And
what was the resistance?
It's a good word. I would say like you start feeling like this ego thing where, that's not real poker, like you're not better, like you're not, whatever. But at the same time, you were looking at their lifestyles and I was looking at mine. I was like, dude, this guy is a fucking baller. And he's like, he's never overbetting his life, like, it's like, dude, what is going on here? People didn't even work with solvers. Like I actually started like, when I started playing poker, I started like learning with solvers, like it was just like my reality. I was like very into that. I think I was like even, I don't know, like very into solvers, like into Pio, into like 18, 17. I don't know. It was very early up. So yeah, I would say I was one of those as well. But then priorities changes, right? It was not even about the health. It was more about like, I actually wanted to make more money. As simple as that, as plain as that. And I saw it at the worst, like the money comes from playing like with worse players than you, period. Like it's no more like around that.
Let me tell you about Hand to Note, one of my favorite tools I use to improve as a poker player. What do all our guests have in common? They are deliberate in how they improve. While most of you guys are discussing hands with friends, watching videos, or looking up a spot here and there, it's clear that the top pros build structured systems and use the right tools to actually get better. One of these tools is Hand to Note. Hand to Note tracks every hand I play. I mark spots in game that I'm unsure about or found interesting, which helps me let go of what just happened and stay fully focused on the current hand I'm dealt, knowing that all hands I played are stored and ready to review when my session is over. Because just like in sports, the next game starts when this one ends. After I perform my session, I go in review mode. I go over my marked hands, the biggest spots I've played, and filter for specific spots I'm currently focused on. Session after session, I build a database of my game, and over time, my tendencies and biggest leaks start to show. This information allows me to direct all my studying to what is most important. With that clarity alone, you can cut your journey to the top in half. But it's not just your own game, because Hand to Note tracks those of your opponents too. Every action they take is stored and ready to be analyzed, ready to be exploited. And as the legendary Sun Tzu said, if you know the enemy and know yourself, you need not fear the result of 100 battles. Clarity is power. Hand to Note gives you that clarity. So if you want to become more deliberate in how you improve as well and start exploiting your opponents at a higher level, check out Hand to Note via the link in the description down below to start your 14-day free trial and use code MECHANICS to get 10% off your first purchase. You mentioned that you look or you learn a lot looking at people who you want to become. Did you have like some sort of role model in this case? Did you have someone who kind of showed you that way, that like, what are you doing on the Zoom in PokerStars. Like I'm here, not overbetting, having a baller life, and I'm playing for 2K now, 5K now.
Yeah, I don't really, I can't really remember like role models at the time, to be honest. Like I feel like it was like so long ago. It's definitely, I don't know. I can't really remember, like, and I don't really want to say like names, too. I'm more like now, like, I really like, like, for example, I see players that like Barak, for example, right? Like Barak is someone that obviously is theoretically very sound, but he's like one of the biggest GG winners of all time. I think he's the biggest, whatever. I think he's always playing like, oh, maybe not now. Maybe I think now he battles a lot because he's won a lot of money. Maybe at one point it will be for fun, I think he was like one of those, that I don't think he was like the biggest like battler of all time, but he was just making all the money, once like 3, 4, 5 years ago. So it was like, maybe that's the way. And I was also looking at some friends that they're not really known, maybe, yeah, I mean, but this one he's a really strong player, but he's like Marcos Ladev, Maku. He's been a long time friend of mine, and he's always been a beast, someone I admire. Like he also like only came to like, he never battled as far as I remember. Yeah, he played Zoom as well, but he was like so like ahead of the pool, whatever. But then when he was playing higher and whatever, his win rate was absurd in every side. He was just like playing short sessions, really focused, and always playing with like, I'm not even saying like recreationals only, but he was only playing like people that he considered like worse than him, that notoriously, like he knew he was winning money, like he knew, like, and he was very certain about it. And I was like, that's great. Like I also want to win at like 10 BB per 100, and have these like play like less hours. And I was like, that's great. I think that's a really good example. And also like sometimes a lot of people, I would love to say this, relate game selecting with like pool hunting and like I don't know, saying that, oh, but that's like, you're not really like playing good, whatever. They relate it to like being a weak player. But dude, like Marcus is like one of the strongest players I've ever seen play, right? And I also study a lot, and I know a lot of people who also like, study a lot. And it's not only about like, I even play heads up some pros that I think they're even worse than me, whatever. But what I'm saying, like, it's about the idea of like only putting yourself on like good, profitable spots. It's something that it's really hard to like put, I think, for a lot of poker players.
How do you find the balance between being that player who always wants to be better, but also the guy who recognizes it's a business? Because like, I feel like what kind of happens, and I've experienced this for sure. If I would focus a bit more on, let's call it the bum hunting grind, kind of the necessity, I kind of lean back more. Oh, like, yeah, in the days, scripted a nice game, got it on a fish, nice. Okay, you just, you lean back, you click. And whereas battling, it kind of forces me more to focus, and I feel like that's when it improves my game. So on one side, we have I can take hourly now, but I kind of lazy. On the other side, I can go harder, then my hourly goes down, but at least the necessities go up. So I'm really forced to become a better player. How do you find that balance?
So that's very interesting, right? Like I always look into like maybe like trying something new. Like for example, it made me like, I also played a lot of MTTs. Like I've probably made a similar amount of money playing MTTs in cash games lifetime. Like that's a lot. Like like that's a lot to study as well. And that also keeps you like working around, but also with the same idea. I didn't play tournaments because I wanted to compete. Because it was absurdly easy, like whatever, especially at the time, like years ago, it was just way too easy. Maybe not now. That's why I also stopped anyways. But then not also MTTs like, with, different formats, right? I played basically every format on No Limit that there is, like, with ante, small ante, big ante, estrado, bump pot, everything that there is, like, I will study it, with like solvers, like I will talk about it, I will find a way to like solve it and like use my brain around and make like a structure. So that's also fun for me, like I'll play heads up, I'll learn all this small stuff, that makes me interesting for a while, then I'll learn, and then it also gives me the tools so I can just play 10 sites if I want and all the formats I want, and I will be like at least very decent and have like a really good win rate. But also there is this competitive nature that you're saying that I also have it, but I push it once I feel like, okay, now I feel like I'm playing really bad, like I need to focus for a while. So I will probably start playing on a site that has like no Rake or that you can definitely track your stats, and I will focus on that for a while. Like I will play certain amount of hands for like a month or 2 months, just like locked in, like for a while, giving less weight to the game selecting, but definitely winning money, just less money than before maybe, but it doesn't matter. My focus will be on like fixing all the stuff. Like I'm always being I've always done a lot of this like database analysis and all this stuff, so I can do it to myself from time to time, and I can kind of like see where I'm missing. So that's something I do.
I think one of the trade-offs people think they're making here is that when you play soft pools, you make good hourly, but you don't improve very much. Whereas when you play tough lineups, tough games, you get better at poker, you become a beast, but you don't make money in the short term. And then players end up battling a lot, thinking, all right, I'm going to get good at poker, and then I'll cash in that skill set and make lots of money at a different point. So the way you're speaking there, I think there's a bit more of an interplay and a bit more of a focus on making money. I think people who get into the battling, I really feel like you've got to be honest with yourself and how competition makes you feel. So as René was speaking there, I also related to competition brings out a different level of focus and drive in me that I can't get from softer games. That's just an itch that can't be scratched from lesser competition. And I like that. I like that it's forced me to do more, to become a better version of myself. So there's a growth element in that. However, there's also a big ego part. I want to beat somebody. I want to get my self-worth. I want to show I belong. So it's trying to balance those. Like, am I really growing? Am I really trying to scratch my ego and show, hey, look how good I am. I've just battled this guy. So I think as a poker player, as you mentioned, Yoshi, knowing yourself is so important. What are you here for? Are you here to battle and prove yourself, or are you here to make a lot of money? And trying to really align that. So when you were speaking, I was thinking of the importance of knowing your values. What are your values? Do you value health? Do you value freedom? Do you value achievements? Do you value the competition? What do you value for yourself, and really aligning your life with that? And I think for yourself as your biggest driver is to have that kind of overall lifestyle and balance and make lots of money in poker. I'm sure majority of people will probably listening and watching will relate to, I want poker to be a vehicle to create wealth and opportunities for the future whilst living a good life. And there'll be a subset who go, you know what, I just want to be number one. I just want to be the best. Like, forget everything else. I'll burn through everything just to get that badge of honor. So yeah, I think for yourself, you've been a good example of someone who's juggled both those like kind of polarizations. You can still step into competition, but the driver for your grind is to find good games, find beatable games, find high win rates. And I feel like it's a good anchor to return to. I think some people, myself included for a long time, get lost in the competition, maybe for the wrong reasons. Obviously there's a growth side of it, which I always think is nice, but sometimes you can get lost in competition for competition's sake, which actually takes you away from the bigger goal. And with that, as you mentioned earlier, more stress, more fatigue, more likely to burn out, which can also offset all the other goals, or the other life goals you're trying to achieve. So I think it's a really important one. Now, in the questionnaire, you mentioned a really nice phrase, which I just want to circle back around to because we've covered it for the last 40, 50 minutes. But you mentioned finding greatness in life and your philosophy for that. So I'd love you to, if you could, summarize what you found out about yourself on the pursuit of greatness in poker, and away from it, what is finding greatness in life for you? What does that mean in terms of a life philosophy?
So about greatness in life, I think I will start with life. I would say that that's the most important. Like, of course, like it doesn't matter for me if you're great in poker and your life is shit. It doesn't really matter. I would rather be mediocre in poker and have like a really good life. Like that's my values. That's what I like, what I think greatness in life is. Obviously, I'm not like something that's qualified to say this. I would say in general, but from my experience, it's like, being healthy, like being with your loved ones, having time to actually enjoy your shit, your money. Like, it doesn't matter if you have the money, if you can actually enjoy it, and like, it actually takes time to enjoy your time and your money for some reason. Like, I have a lot of successful friends that don't know what to do with their lives. It's weird because I have a lot of unemployed friends that it's just like having the time of their life. They don't even have time for lunch. They don't have money for lunch, sorry. But they have the time of their life every fucking day. And I'm like, I have all these sort of friends who are like fucking like poker millionaires or crypto millionaires. And I have friends that I like, just living day by day. And I'm like, You know, like maybe I would love to be the other guy, like if I have to choose. You know what I'm saying? Obviously, like saying this in this podcast is very controversial, I guess, because, you know, most of the guys here are like amazing poker players and definitely prioritize poker. It doesn't need to be separated, I would say. I think, as I said first, right, like recognizing what's good for you. It's like whatever fitness in life is going to be different for like every person does. And so for me, as I said, it's just half the health, half the time, and enjoy whatever you like. To me, there's nothing more important than that. And in poker, just about like greatness in poker, obviously, like I would love to be like fucking, you know, Lyman's, you know, like I have all these skills maybe in poker, right? But to me, it's like, yes, that's great, right? But well, at the same time, like, am I willing to put the time and sacrifices on whatever that maybe they are doing, like the top 10 guys to do to get there? Maybe don't. Maybe, I don't know, maybe I have to be honest. Maybe I'm not smart enough to be there, or maybe I don't have the time. Maybe I don't care, right? But whatever it is, I think is like in poker, it's just as well, it's going to be personal. But for me, it's like whoever wins the most money, to be honest, and like whoever has to work the less to win the most. That's always been on my head, you know, like don't kill yourself, but at the same time, if you can like try to win the most while working the less, is just like, you know, the dream.
Is the reason for that, the kind of making more money in less time, the reason you hold that such high value is because you value your time away from poker, spending time with friends, surfing, you value that so highly, so when you have less time for poker but a higher hourly, you have more time free for the rest of your life? Is that the reason that you value that?
I would say yes, like definitely. And I would say anyone that has like a really good life outside of the tables definitely like enjoy having more free time, you know? I mean, yeah, maybe okay, so I don't have responsibilities now as like kids or whatever of this like financial pressure that maybe some other people have or whatever. But I don't think you need to be like, you know, the best in order to like provide a good life to your loved ones or whatever as well. I will also say that maybe what I'm saying as well is very influenced by the fact of the health issues, right? The sleeping well, like the getting better of the stomach. Like nowadays, I'm not taking any pills, right? Like my stomach issues are like really mild now. Like I don't really have it, basically. I will have like from time to time, especially if I drink too much alcohol or whatever, but it's just like, I already know. But you know, that definitely influences me in the way, as you said, right? Like you have 1,000 problems, but then when you have a health problem, you only have one. That definitely changed my mind, you know, about like, how do I want to enjoy it? Because now it was that, but maybe in a year, it could be something else that's worse. Maybe, you know, it's over, you know, like maybe I'll die or whatever. Like, it doesn't matter if I was the best poker player or like if I had so much money or if I had, you know, all this weird shit. I'll rather spend time doing what I wanted with the people I want.
Yeah, I think it's a great lesson there. And at some point, we'll all arrive at an age where we'd sacrifice everything we have to be young and healthy again, and we won't be able to. So I think it's really good just to have that lesson brought forward for you. Obviously, the health issues have made it so apparent, so true, so real for you at a younger age, which gives me that perspective of, wait a second, health drives everything else. Why would I sacrifice that for more dollars in the bank account? And yeah, I think it's something that we all need to think about for ourselves. And I also feel like life can be in phases. Like sometimes you can sacrifice health, maybe in your early 20s, for that kind of wealth boost, like just be a bit obsessive drive, just go hardcore to get a bit of a head start in poker, a head start financially, and then maybe find that balance on your way. But at some point, you have to find that for yourself, or yeah, you're basically on a bit of a fast track to some health issues which are going to need addressed at some point. Whether you kick the can down the road long enough, it's still going to at some point arrive at a problem to deal with. So yeah, actually I wanted to ask you, because something I wrote down in terms of getting people to think about their health more seriously. I think is a hard thing because people think health's a long-term thing and they want the short-term rewards. But for you, I want to know, like, when you started to prioritize your health, how did your performance improve in the short term? So you're having these chronic stress issues, you were kind of overactive a lot, but then when you started to address that, how did that link to your like kind of day-to-day performance? Did you notice any kind of increase in focus, any overall increase in performance at the tables?
Okay, so I'm going to start with something that is actually like 100% true, is that once I started focusing on like my own life, or my quality of life, I had like the best year of my poker career playing cash games, but I didn't even prioritize it. It was just a natural result of like being, I don't know if the word's happy, but being more complete, like I would have more time to play when I wanted, like I actually had like a better, like, like better mood, like my mind was like on a better level. I would actually study more, like, without this like back pressure of like, getting better or whatever, like it's kind of funny how it works. Like yeah, that's something. And how I feel about the rest, I would say that it's more about being consistent. It's not like I'm like energized every fucking day or whatever. Like some days, like yesterday, I had like a mediocre sleep for some reason, but then it's okay, but I'm consistently feeling better every day, like waking up earlier, doing my shit, eating healthier, like, all this, like being consistent. It's not like I'm like too precise or too strict about it. Like I will also eat like some junk food or whatever, and I'll do whatever, but I would say the consistency of feeling better, like not having like, oh, okay, big example. My immune system is way stronger now than before. Before, if I got like a simple cold, it would last a lot. And it would feel like really bad for me for no reason. Now it's just usually lasts 3 days, 4 days, maybe sometimes. I don't even get it. Like sometimes I'm in a place where everyone gets a cold because there's like it's contagious, and I don't even get it. And it's like in the past, I used to be very like sensitive to that. Like I would be the guy that gets the illness at the opposite, right? Before the others. Yeah, stuff like that, like feels amazing,
Yeah, you feel better, you perform better, both short-term, long-term, and yeah, I think this conversation is going to give a lot to reflect on for people to think about how they're making those current adjustments in their life, how they're thinking about their health. And yeah, some young people will be like, yeah, screw you guys, I'm going to trade off for a while in terms of health for wealth. But I think a lot of people will be listening to this and start to nod their head going, yeah, I need to start thinking about my health a bit more and how to align that better with the long-term goals.
About that, like, I would also say that maybe if I didn't have all these issues, maybe I would be pushing more, to be honest. Like, I don't know what would happen to me if I didn't, right? Obviously, once you reach to a certain financial point, the return, right, of like money and like happiness is like, it's not linear, right? It's like this, like it doesn't, you know what I'm saying? Like when you pass a certain point, it's just like whatever. But then at the same time, it's like, I don't know what would happen to me if I was not having these health issues, to be honest. Like I don't think I have like the right, the truth, about it. But I would say that most young people, as you say, like will give health as something that is on the long term, right? But once you have it, it sucks, man. It's awful. Like and if you want to think about it in like poker terms, you can also think about it EV, right? Maybe you're okay now, but there's a chance you get the bad beat eventually, right? Like your chances are you're gonna get like something if you get like, like having like a really bad health lifestyle. You know what I'm saying? Maybe you don't if you run pure, or maybe you're like on the good size of the variance. But if you don't, it really sucks, right? So maybe think about it in terms of ED.
Great idea.
It's really nerd to think about it, maybe, but yeah, I poker gave me this idea. Everything I have is EV, man. Like it's fun. It's fun.
No, I think it's actually a good framing. I think poker players relate heavily to that, the EV decisions. Every decision's got a expected value and how to make good decisions for your life as well as for poker. I think it's a lot of players use the same framing for all the decisions. So yeah, when you talk about life EV, health EV, I think players will very much gravitate towards that lens of thinking.
You mentioned that it took around 5 to 6 years to go from the Zoom grind, which I think you quickly touched on, to reach the levels of play where you're at now. If you look back during that period, what do you think were some of the most important skills and experience you needed to learn in order to finally make it to high stakes?
I would say get really good at the basics, like the most common spots. I know this is like a really, I know this is a tip that everyone gives, I guess. It's really true. Like just for me, it's just like, if you focus a lot on like what's very like it it's usually a good start. If you fix your flop, defenses, your flop c-bet, your turn c, like everything that's more common, usually it's not on the big pots, but I think that's a really good start. Also, analyzing like stats, I would say, like getting to understand which are the stats you're aiming. It's a really good start as well. Back in the days, there's a lot of data mining going on, and I could see like how the best players were playing. And I saw like the hat of like basically the best players around, and I would filter obviously for 6 spots. And I would say, okay, so these are the things that these guys have in common. These are sometimes some stuff that there's like an identity. And back in the day, it was even more, you can even tell more differences. Nowadays, not so much, but I can see, right? So, okay, so what this guy is doing, why is he going so much to the showdown? Why is this guy not? But they are both winning a lot. It would take me some time. For me, it was like, okay, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my stats to the same where they are all the same, You know what I'm saying? Like if they are all aiming for like something that the best have, it must be for a reason, So I was like starting to like look into the hands of like, okay, what are they doing? What's going on behind it's not only about reaching the number, right? It's also like the strategy behind. So I would say at first I was just like emulating a lot. I will not lie. I was emulating a lot that helped me. And then once I reached to a hat that was really similar to like the past, I was like, okay, I made it. But then I realized like maybe I don't understand really that well, but it was working for that, But with years, yeah, it comes around the understanding the why. But I think emulating is a really good start.
Do you recall anything specific that you emulated from like one of the better players that you were like, oh yeah, that was a cool trick that, that I got from analyzing this guy's HUD that really helped me? Does anything stand out?
It's a very specific question. I mean, I can remember like a lot of, I can't remember like a single trick, right? Like, because in HUDs, I was just trying to understand like frequencies, in general that they were aiming. At the time, I don't think hand to node was the thing. I think studying boards or even sizing wise was the thing. It was more about frequencies. I was trying to aim, okay, why this guy is having this much, I don't know, like I'm saying 2018 for having like 15% check raise on the flop on single raise spots as a pre-flop caller out of position was a fucking lot, Most of the people had like 6 or 8. And it was like, why are these guys having 15? Why is this guy having 20, or whatever? I don't know, like, so studying a lot of what was going on, understanding the positions, like all this stuff, like, okay, maybe there's an exploit behind, But yeah, I would say that just the basic stuff, like, like frequencies of flop c-bet, frequencies of fold to flop c-bet, like all this stuff was just like, okay, like maybe I should be starting to look something like that. And then once I like fix my flop, I would go to turn. Once I finish with turn, I would go with river. Then I would go to like river bet frequency or one money after bet or like, fold river or single raise pot and 3-bet pots. And I would start like little by little, just like, fixing all this stuff. And then, yeah, say, in general, aggression, I would say. Yeah, that's a basic. As basic as it gets, but just like being solid, being aggressive is just like, was the way to go, right?
I think it also helps, actually. You mentioned like, you hear a lot of guys come on the podcast, yeah, you should study the frequent spots, nail the frequent spots. And, it's true, everyone repeats it. That obviously confirms that it's true. But it's not, obviously it's important, but there's like a psychological thing going on there as well. If you constantly get into situations where like, I know the spot and you constantly nail it, every time you make like small wins. And I feel like that just puts you more in flow and therefore you will make better decisions in the bigger pots. Do you kind of understand what I mean? So obviously it's important because it's frequent, but I think also then the effects that it has that you're just more confident because hey, yes. I know this, hey, I know this, hey, I know this. And then the big pot comes, you're feeling confident. Hey, I'll be able to figure this out.
Yeah. I think it gets better with experience, I would say. Obviously, when getting good at poker takes so long, I would say. But at first, understanding the why, yeah, it's very important. But it's going to take you time. You know what I'm saying? And about the frequent spots, it's just like, getting good bottom versus big blind versus blind, cutoff versus big blind, trivet pots, bottom versus cutoff, blind be blind, small versus bottom. Then once you get into these spots, then you can kind of get the heuristics behind because you understand wide ranges, tight ranges, and all this stuff. And then maybe you can extrapolate it to the other situations. But, again, if you think about it in ideas, it comes last. Like, it just doesn't matter as a big picture. I would say that, and I would say that one of my skills at first, it was like I was always being like able to recognize, even if I lost a big pot, if it doesn't matter the situation, if it doesn't really happen or like whatever that common of, even if I didn't lose it, maybe if I'm just a spot where I don't know what to do, I'm like, fuck it. Like, it doesn't matter, like, it just doesn't, it doesn't really matter what happens then. I'll just probably play it as I can. Like, there's usually heuristics I can take from other spots. And I would say with years, I've come like really better at that. And now I can have like a stronger grasp of theory now. But back in the day, I will just be like, fuck it. I will just like do it the safe thing or like what I think will work the most. But if I fuck it up, doesn't matter. That was my mindset.
You mentioned like you were emulating a bit. When did you get to a point where you kind of realize, okay, maybe just emulating is not enough. I kind of have to step it up. Did you notice like some resistance at some stake, maybe that you moved up to? It's like, I need to do more than emulating.
I mean, yeah, I would say that saying emulating is obviously simplifying a lot, right? It's obviously more than that, but it was working for me, right? Like I would say that if something works and it's like really working, like on a low term, I'm not saying like a small sample, saying like a 500k hash doing really good or whatever, and like it's probably like whatever you're doing is working, right? But then I would say also once I started coaching, I needed to understand what I was doing, like so I always work with solvers, but at first I thought I was using it well by the time. Then thinking it back, I was just like probably just using it wrong. But then I started trying to understand what was going. Okay, so what's the heuristic? Instead of trying to put a hand on the solver and give the answer, I'm trying to understand. Okay, why the solver is doing this? What portion of the range? And nowadays it's just like that, right? Like even if I'm not precise enough, if I'm following what I learned from the solver, it's just good enough for me. I think I went too deep into. Not too deep. I went to the branches of the question. I think, and I can answer now your question about like when I noticed. I think, yes, when I started coaching, and yes, also when I started playing higher, once I started competing with like really good players, because even if you game select, you still play with the best, right? So obviously you kind of want to understand, okay, so what's going on here? And there's also this motivation of like, playing versus the best. Okay, maybe I need to start studying these, and yes.
When you started to play against the best, how is playing against the best different? What makes them the best?
Well, just like the cheap tricks just doesn't work, right? Like there's a lot of stuff that you can learn that will work at like most mid stakes that even I teach to my players, but I will tell them, okay, so this is for this population that will work because most people are playing like 12 tabling, they are tired, they don't even know what they're doing. So, they're not even aware of frequencies of whatever, like they will mainly make these mistakes. But obviously once you get higher, right, like people are obviously more aware, right? Like they're smarter in general, more solid. Like you can do like these simple tricks or okay, this situation, people are overfolding always. Okay, then you start getting cold every time there and you're like, okay, maybe this is not the way. Or maybe there's a spot where you think everyone is over bluffing. Okay, maybe these guys are actually doing the opposite because I'm getting destroyed there. I don't know, stuff like that, So actually you start, I think for me, it opened like something else, opened my intuition with the game. And I started like mixing like everything I studied. I studied like solvers, I studied MDA, I studied like, I don't know, the profile of the players. But then something that maybe was missing a lot in me was like, okay, my intuition, like how do I combine this? And like, do I think like, what do I actually expect them to do on the rivers? If I actually expect them to overfold, or, you know, like thinking about over, like if something is over or under, gave me a lot of like, you know, like a different framework, and anticipating a lot, actually seeing it like a, yeah, like a chess game or something like that, where you know, you're trying to outplay some people, you know, trying to do this like different stuff. Yeah, I'll say that was the biggest thing.
How did your experience of playing poker change after you allowed for more intuition? So it kind of sounds like the way I see intuition, right? Like you said, you've done all this work, all these years up to it, and with intuition, listening to intuition, you kind of allow yourself to use all the knowledge that you accomplish. So I guess 2 questions. What do you think stops players from listening to their intuition more? And what is like, how did your playing experience actually change? What did you notice in game when you started to listen to your intuition more?
Okay, so I would say that for to answer this, right, before I started like playing like actually high stakes, like there was a time in 2023, maybe up to there, I was mainly playing like mainly 5-10, sometimes higher, you know, if I get good games. But my main game was around 5-10, 10-20 on GG was not a thing. But I was just playing mainly 5-10, like on, you know, what, and around, you know, whatever. But then they clicked to me like, okay, I think by the time the GG high stakes games were open and were popping everywhere, then there was a lot of big games everywhere. And I was like, it came to me the nature of actually becoming better. So I actually started getting coached with a elite player of the high stakes of the time. And I was working with him. He never used like a MDA or anything. It was just like, we would open like rules by the time, which is like what eventually becomes GTO Wizard AI. But then, but everything became like using our brain. I was like, what? Like this guy is solving every hand just like with brain intuition. It was like, this is, you know, like I will actually coach people to not do that. This guy was coaching me like that. I was like, dude, and it was great. You know, like I was actually, you know, feeling, you know, different about the poker, because it opened this door of like, you know, anticipating like what are they, you know, like all this stuff. And I think that's something that opened a lot, you know. And then when you said about other people closing to their intuition, well, first of all, you need to know theory, right? Like when I say intuition, I'm not saying like street poker. I'm not saying like, you know, just like doing whatever your heart says. I'm saying like it's not even an educated guess. It's just like structuring everything and then actually getting to like the data points that you actually need in a hand instead of like chaotic, you know, because there's a lot of stuff, right? But just using the correct data points, I would say, and then coming to the river decision of, okay, is this over or under? You know, if I'm bluff catching, is this over or under bluffed? Or if I'm bluffing, or if it is over, or if I'm value betting the same. If I'm value betting thing, if this is over folded, maybe I do not value bet, right? Vice versa. If I'm bluffing, if this is over folded, fuck blockers, like, you know, whatever, just go. And that opened my mind a lot.
This reminds me of a podcast that we did in Owen, where he kind of said that one of his big breakthroughs, I think, was with coachings with Dot. They were able to isolate the most important factor in the hand, always. Like I would have all these things and then Dot would come in and then he would just say one sentence and that basically summed everything up. Does that sound like a little bit similar experience that you had with your coach? And if so, what do you think it was that he was focused on that helped him do that? And what kind of did you learn from him?
Well, obviously, there's a lot of theory-wise things that I wasn't so aware by the time. Like, I remember the low equity bluffs, for example. Like, that was something I didn't even consider by the time. I would say this, which makes me feel pretty dumb, to be honest. But, I mean, I would know some stuff, but I didn't know how, you know, I don't know, maybe this is like a lot of free information. But I think that a lot of people already said in podcasts, but yeah, how freaking, then how strong they were in terms of like, good blockers to the river and whatever, and like, you know, why maybe some bluffs have more success when you have this sort of like unblockers and whatever, but then to have this sort of unblockers, you have to actually have shit from before. And it was like, I didn't have that, right? Because it's just uncomfortable, right? To arrive with that. So obviously getting stronger theoretically, helps a lot. But then getting to a point where, like, as you say, right? Okay, what are the, as I call the data points on the river, right? A lot of people use it the same. What are the data points I want to use, right? To bluff catching or bluffing or evaluating, whatever. Just simplify it by, I don't know, positions, sizings, in the streets before, even timing tells was, like, for example, this is something that was coached. I was like, I will never think about that. Like, never. I don't think until 2023 I've ever used like timing tells in my life, right? Which is, yeah, it's a big thing, you know, like, not even on the river, like, even from pre-flop or like flop, but like everything is just so, like, you know, connected that you can actually range people on a lot of stuff, you know? So yeah, I think that's a big thing of, like, you know, like the big shifting mentality.
Would you say it was like the process of looking more outwards to, like, kind of what you said, ranging your opponents, taking in the information, sizing, timing,
for sure.
Then looking inwards, right? I think in poker in general, we're very focused on our strategy, on doing this.
Yeah.
And then what this coach kind of taught you, he doesn't need to solve because he's looking outwards.
Yeah, 100%. 100%. I think you can be really structured in general, but at the same time, always thinking about the other player. Like, it could be a very dangerous game if you make mistakes or wrong assumptions constantly, right? Like, obviously, once you deviate from balance, you're exploiting. If you're exploiting on the wrong way, then you are the one getting destroyed, right? As simple as that. But if you trust yourself and, like, you know, like, I don't know, you pardon yourself every time you make a mistake, because obviously it hurts, right? Once you make an assumption and then you get, you know, you think you're just gonna get overfolded and then you get bluffed, you get called by, like, I don't know, like the worst hand to call you, right? And it's like, fuck, I'm dumb, you know, like, why did I, like, but then you have to make, okay, like, stuff like this will happen, you know, and, like, keep on going. And if you just trust, you know, like, what you're studying and then what your intuition said, obviously not, when I say intuition, it's like, again, what you studied, right? Like, but then, like, combining everything, right? Like, about the solver, if you think about population, what you think about the profile, if he thinks you think something, I don't know, it can get hard to get into, you know, the details, but sometimes you just feel it, you know, like, okay, this is a spot where, like, you know, it's usually overfolded, but this guy is just gonna call me, you know, like.
It's called intuition for a reason, right? And like you said, it's not one thing. It's when all the data points, like you said, years of solvers, MDA, player profile, you've done it all, you know? And intuition is when, at a very rapid rate, it puts everything together into a feeling. So I love it when people then say to, like, a new guy, just follow your intuition. Like, yeah, this guy's new to poker. He cannot follow his intuition because he doesn't have the same experience as you. So it's not fair to ask him to follow his intuition, right? I do actually like what you said about the river. And I think that's kind of shows an insight in how simple, quote, quote, it can be, right? While the guy bluffs, bets on the river, you have a bluff catcher. Is it likely over bluffed or under bluffed? You know, you have to think, well, what's my minimum defense frequency? What blocker here, what blocker there? It's like, no, this is pretty likely over bluffed. Okay, yeah, fuck the blockers. Like, if in the end, you know, it's still close, and obviously, you know, and obviously in some situations, blockers matter more than others, etc. But I think that kind of shows how, quote, quote, simple it can be.
Yeah. I mean, the question is simple, but how to answer it, right? Or how you get to the answer is a difficult part. Obviously, there's a long work to range people. Like, that's something that, like, for example, when I coach players that actually play higher stakes online, like, or beat the stake, like 500, 1K, or they even play up to 2K, right? And we talked about ranging people. Like, I can sense that sometimes they just can't do it for some reason, that I can do it. And I don't think it's because I'm, like, smarter or something. It's just there's a lot of practice, or, like, paying attention to the right details, you know, like, because so a small example, right? If you're blind and a guy that always range bet, just on, like, King 9-4, this guy always sees like a quarter, and then all of a sudden starts betting 2/3, obviously his range is different, right? He's obviously, like, you know what I'm saying? Like, obviously, if he's not range waiting for that, and then you can start putting, okay, what's the weight from the flop? Is he gonna be more equity oriented, or is he gonna actually, because if you put it on a solver, it could be correct if you use one sizing, whatever, or any sizing could be correct if you put it into the solver on the flop. The solver will put like a lot of these low equity things or whatever that will actually become really good at the river or whatever. All these like value bluffs, whatever. It's insanely hard to balance this. So once this guy gets to the turn, he keeps barreling on the river. Like the range is just so fucked up, that it all comes down to, okay, on the flop, is this guy having like high equity or not? And then if you imagine like a flush draw misses, is this guy gonna bluff his flush draws when everybody knows bluffing missed flush draws is like really bad? If he really gonna bluff like, I don't know, the ace king highs, blind be blind, or king jack high, or ace jack high, whatever, but maybe he should on that note if he actually chooses that size, and then you come to the river like, nah, this is never getting over bluffed on the river. Like this is like, so you actually get to fold a lot of hands or, this sort of example of like analysis. But then a lot of my players will be like, oh, okay, but he might have this sort of hand that, has a blocker. And I'm like, do you think this guy is going to be betting like middle pair on the flop with like for 2/3 for no reason? Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, no fucking way. Do you think this guy is going to bet ace queen off on king 9/4 on the flop because he needs the blocker on the river? Like, there's no fucking way. You know what I'm saying? Or even ace 5 off. Like, like you'll find the bluff on the solver and then on the practice is like, he never has them, So that sort of stuff, I think ranging, like obviously it gets easier once people deviate, right? On earlier streets. But I think that kind of like framework of like analyzing everything even from pre-flop is just like really important.
Yeah, I definitely strongly agree. How do you teach this? You already said like it sometimes feels like that for me it's so easy and so obvious, but for them it seems to be very difficult. How do you bridge the gap? How do you teach people to get better at this? Obviously, the first step is like kind of to look outwards, right? Because some people are so focused on what do I have to do, that they missed completely that he suddenly upsized while he was always 1/3. I see poker. If you think about it, if you know someone's hand, the decision that you have to make is super easy, correct? Like if you know someone's hands, then most of your effort in a poker hand should be around trying to figure out what the guy has. Because if you know what the guy has, your decision is easy. Whereas people often try to make a decision without trying to figure out what their opponent has. Then obviously, suddenly making a decision now becomes very difficult. Right?
Yeah.
How do you teach it?
Okay, so most of what I teach is that obviously I rely a lot on like solvers and like MBA and all this. But I use like once I coach, I start like using a lot of this like understanding the why for them, like so if we were starting like, I don't know, on my hand history like before, right? If on pre-flop, okay, so this guy, we know he's opening blind be blind 42%. Okay, but now this guy, another guy opens 50. Okay, his range is way different. You know what I'm saying? Or 50, there's a lot of different profiles and like ranging from pre-flop, even every single detail is just gonna, as you say, right? Try to give you an information of what he could have, and then narrowing like on the turn and then all this simple stuff of like, okay, what's the sizing he's using, right? Is this something that a person would normally use it? Or is he actually maybe deviating? I think on low, even like mid-high stakes, people a lot tell you their hand strength a lot with their sizing tell for no reason. So just even as a test or as a whatever, you can try to focus a lot on that and like try to guess their hands. Yeah, even like if you don't trust yourself, just do it and you see how often you're right about like what kind of hand they have, just based on their sizings and timings and all this stuff. And it's kind of funny because you kind of start trusting yourself. You kind of, people are pretty obvious, right? And that obviously most players don't want to do that. But the main issue with a lot of the players is that mass multi-tabling, I would say, playing long hours, like you can see on a lot of sites, people playing long leaderboards. Humanly, it's impossible to keep everything, Obviously, you don't never want to tell your house friend to anyone, right? Like, it's stupid to think about that. Unconsciously, if you're tired, like you're just gonna play faster when like you just want the hand to be over, you know, or like you know, like there's a lot of stuff that's just like people just give it away, and that's something I do as well. As like I tag people from like, okay, this guy plays certain amount of tables, this guy play long hours, you know, like this guy is playing a lot of siege match tables, he's playing heads up, he's playing 300, whatever, like he's probably gonna make wrong decisions and give away the information of the hand, you know. So focusing a lot of that, and maybe I gave a lot of that what my thought process is, but I think I relate a lot with what you said, Rene, about like just trying to narrow what the other person is like having. Obviously, going to a hand almost impossible most of the time, but narrowing to like a range and then, you know, trying to, you know, play around that, I think is the most important thing.
Yeah, so from what I hear also, it's more of a habit, right? If you get into the habit of already, like pre-flop, you start with the range and you just simply start eliminating it. This is actually a skill that, I mean, I'm in poker a little bit longer than you. I got 10 years more on you, but although in the beginning, this was all we had in poker. You start with a range and you start narrowing it down. This is what everyone thought, but at some point it kind of disappeared into fuck, now I'm trying to narrow someone else's range. You're only playing your range and your strategy. It's funny also that you mentioned that at some point you start, it's kind of what you said, if you start practicing it, then you can actually also do this in your database. Just go through previous hands of other people and just start guessing the hands. And with that, you start to gain trust. And this was very key, in my opinion, to enter the knowledge that you have in your intuition. I think what would block it is not trusting. If you trust, and with experience you know that you're right, then with that trust, you know, then decisions also become easier. I think a reason people choke on river, or, you know, you start to feel overwhelmed and you grab to the blockers and I don't know how many concepts you can make up at that moment, is simply because you don't trust yourself. I think trust kind of brings that silence and helps you narrow down what's truly important. Then you're like, oh no, you forget everything else because you trust yourself. No, this is clear fold, or this is clear call. I already saw this coming, you know?
Yeah, but I mean, to trust yourself, you also need to be really well educated, right? Because like sometimes like, if you tell a student, you know, like he's like, no, I think he's over bluffing, and I see the spot is like, dude, like, no, don't trust yourself, you know. Sometimes
trust has weird.
I have a player, I know that he's like massively overcalling every reel, and like every time it's like you want to call, it's probably a fold, okay? And like if it's like you're massively sure that it's a call, okay, call. If it's close, definitely fold. You know, like it's like if it's close or you think it's a slightly close, just fold, man. Just fold. You know, like do the. And I have like the other part. I have players that I tell them, okay, so you need to bluff more here, or like put this sizing or whatever. And I was like, okay, if you ever think you need to give up, just bluff it. You think you're close, bluff it. You know, just do it. Just do it. You know, like so. It's funny because to trust your intuition, you need to be really strong fundamentally, I would say, or theoretically, right? And once, the same as you said, right? As a starting player trusting his intuition, yes, it will work against worse players. If you play against really bad players, right? Like, yes, it's obviously easier. Like, it's why, like, players like Nick Ranimal or players from the old school were, like, really savvy about it, right? Because players were like really bad, and then you could actually arrange people to even a hand for some reason, because, you know, if you're playing someone that's really face up, like, yes, you can sometimes narrow to a hand. Obviously, the stronger the player, the harder it gets.
It cannot be one trick that you rely on, right? Less, for example, in the past, that was one trick that people relied on, and then they faced a more skilled opponent who plays a more solid strategy, gave less away, and they have nothing to fall back on. So that's obviously, you know, where I'm not going to say that that's the only skill needed, but it is kind of a skill that's being maybe forgotten, I guess we could call it this way, or there's less of an emphasis on it nowadays, with good reason, right? Because like you said, on average, the opponent gives less away. So it makes sense that we started to look elsewhere, to strengthen. But I feel like at some point when you've already strengthened the area enough in order to progress, you might need to look outwards. And there's other players who are already very good at that, and they actually need to strengthen their fundamentals, right? Their theory. So it really depends where you are as a player. Alongside using solvers to build a strong theoretical foundation, I started studying population tendencies back in 2016 to get a more accurate picture on how people actually played. I went from trying to mind read my opponents to clearly seeing where the exploits were and which decisions were actually plus EV. Once my decisions were rooted in data, I stopped second-guessing my bluffs, calls and folds and became far less affected by short-term results, as I now knew exactly what the ranges really looked like. Just like solvers have evolved from setting up your own biosims to effortlessly browsing any solution you want in GTO Wizard, data has gone through the same evolution. What used to require massive databases, powerful computers and hours of manual work is now fully accessible instantly in your browser thanks to SnapMDA. With SnapMDA, studying how humans really play has now become more powerful and accessible than ever before. You get access to over 450 million hands played across all major sites, removing any sample size issues or guesswork. SnapMDA automatically compares human tendencies to GTO play and instantly shows you the EV of your plays. Alongside river bluffing frequencies, it shows flop and turn range compositions not distorted by showdown bias, allowing you to clearly see where ranges are too strong and too weak so you can avoid and strike accordingly. You can filter for any specific player profile, from aggressive to passive rags and from small fish to big whales, and start to see that what looks random in isolation actually follows clear, predictable patterns once you zoom out. In short, SnapMDA shows you exactly what the ranges really look like, from pre-flop all the way to the river, and once you know the ranges, the correct strategy becomes much clearer. You can even analyze the strategies of top performers or this group of bots that have been consistently crushing the games. So if you're tired of uncertainty and over-relying on blockers to make decisions, SnapMDA can help. Start with a 7-day free trial and get 15% off your description using code MECHANICS, link down below. But without further ado, let's continue with today's episode. You already mentioned coaching already a couple times. I know you you have a CFP, Sharp Poker team, mainly active in Peru, right? Or Spanish speaking in general.
Yeah, it's
also,
always Spanish.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can finish.
I'm curious. Like, obviously, you have a lot of experience coaching. We already chatted about it quite a lot. In your experience, right, working with players, what do you think sets the guys apart who succeed from the guys who fail? Like in CFPs, in coaching programs stuff, they get kind of the same knowledge, right? So in your experience, what sets the guys apart who actually succeed and who fail?
It's funny because I was actually talking about this this weekend with some friends. And I always say it's very controversial maybe. It might be like whatever, but something that usually comes along. It's not even a strategy. It's about like having no pressure in life helps you a lot. Like people live with their parents, have a lot of free time, like that they don't have bills to pay. Usually these guys are the ones who like thrive easier because even if maybe they don't have the motivation as someone who has more bills to pay, they are just naturally less stressed, like naturally more free to execute without feeling shamed or like guilty, they feel safe to make mistakes. While people who usually have a lot of pressure on themselves, it gets really hard. And I'm pretty sure I'm not biased about it. I'm pretty sure like I've seen a lot of this already, and not even with myself only, with other people I've chat a lot. Yes, there's exceptions, of course, but it's not only like being about having responsibilities or not. I would say it's more about creating the environment or the structure, right? Even if you have it, okay, you have it. You have kids, or you support your family or whatever. Okay, maybe create a structure where you can maybe not feel the pressure somehow, maybe find a job somewhere else that have a side income, or maybe, I don't know, like but don't focus. If you actually just bet on poker for no reason, even if you if it gets good, yes, great for you, like amazing, but it's usually not the way, and it gets awful most of the time. So yeah, I would say it all resumes on having a lot of free time and no life pressure. Even whatever your context is, it usually works a lot.
Yeah, I can relate. If I look in my CFP, I think almost everyone who kind of didn't make it, it was all financial pressure. They needed income from poker to survive. Yeah, like it's very easy to say, oh, you should focus on the progress, or yeah, it's just a flip. But if you need to win that flip in order to pay the bills, it's not just a flip, you know. So yeah, I think performing under financial pressure, I mean, it's just impossible.
Yeah, it's pretty sad to say it out loud, to be honest. And I don't know, but I think it needs to be said. I don't know if you ever talk about this with someone on this podcast about it before, but yeah, like it's not a thing that most people say because it sucks. But then if it sucks, maybe, and if you're under this pressure, maybe you can do something about it, you know, and don't fall for this trap, and maybe create a structure to do it. And if you're the kid or the person who doesn't have responsibility, just fucking lock in, do it.
Yeah, I mean, I would say I remember I had a student like who did a job on the side, and then basically with that job he could part-time, and that job covered all his expenses, and the rest of the time he could spend on poker. So obviously he has less time, but then at least there was no pressure, so he could just freely perform, which is way better than someone who didn't have a job and who just needed solely poker, but his role wasn't big enough to survive. So I think it's better obviously you have to evaluate your finance, right? You're probably taking some money, maybe your lifestyle is not according, you maybe have to cut it down, go back to bread and water, for a little while. And that's just how it is. But take that step back, free yourself up financially, try to get something on the side to at least cover the basic expenses, keep your basic expense very low, and then you will be able to focus more on the progress. And then that flip won't matter to you as much. I feel like, taking kind of a step back to later be able to take a bigger step forward is kind of the only way to go. I don't think you can, or at least from what I've seen, just grinding through it, impossible. From my personal experience, like I fucked myself up so bad at some point that I was in such a deep hole that was like nothing what I do will. At some point, it doesn't matter anymore. Where, if your hole is just so deep, but I would not recommend that. So that's also that there's no other option anymore than to just have to focus on the progress.
I mean, as I said, maybe it works. Like there's definitely people that will be like on the good side of variance as well. Like
you need a 100K hand upswing to get you out of it. To get you from that. When I don't know how to call it, when a rocket. When you go through the point, where the gravity holds you back. If you just upswing through that, then from there it's smooth sailing. But to get out of that point, to get out of the point where there's resistance, that's hard.
Exactly. And also something that's really important, I would say, is like being very, very curious, but actively curious. I don't know how to say this in English, but like ask a lot of questions. Being annoying, even like in a sense. Just be the guy who is actually participating a lot in the classes, and asking for like private questions, even like sometimes, crosses the limits, but it doesn't matter at the end. Like sometimes these are usually the guys that, keeps going up and up and up and up. That's also something that I like a lot, to be honest. I kind of advocate a lot. I'm not saying crossing limits in terms of like whatever, but I'm saying about being actively participating, not expecting to passively improve just because you get coached, but take action in terms to get the most from it. That's something I think also that goes hand by hand with the other thing as well, right? Because you have more free time or whatever, you have more questions, whatever it's like that.
You think there are limiting factors like talent to someone's poker ceiling, or do you think that with the right guidance and effort, basically anyone can become a successful poker player?
It depends on successful. Like I would say, if you want to leave from poker, everyone can do it. Like definitely. I know a lot of like really dumb poker players, like really bad. Like these guys are really dumb. They don't even know how to I don't know, like they don't even know how to calculate pot odds. They don't know shit, but they are winning money, a lot of money. And it's like, sometimes I see that, and I see a lot of smart people that actually play bad as well, And it's like, maybe it's not, there's a lot more than being, there's a lot of skills, obviously, that will help you. But I think poker in general is like, it's just really profitable. if you just lock in, very disciplined, and like actually like put the work. If you have the time to put the work, because it's people. I don't know. Like people like to say it's like a sport, like whatever, but I don't think so. Like there's just a lot of like gamblers and people who have a lot of ego and battling, and like they're really bad, and then there's a lot of people gambling and really playing bad as well. It's like playing soccer for money with like you're like one of the best, and then you're playing versus someone who doesn't have a leg for some reason, and he's willing to play versus you with money. It's like, dude, it's no sport, dude. It's like, you'll never see that in anything. It's like playing it's like me playing chess versus Magnus for money. Like, of course I'm gonna get destroyed. That's not a sport. That's a massacre, right? But that's the way I see it. So if you actually get decent enough to just beat the people who actually don't put the work or just like are really bad at the game, then you will win. If you put yourself in the structure where you will win the money, if you find the information on how to actually win the money, again, what I said on the start of the podcast, right? Poker for me is like a business. It's not like it's a business. Like it's not only about getting better or being the best poker player, it's about winning the most. It should be the same for everyone, I think, and in terms of like in terms of states or whatever, right? So you can definitely find a way to play profitably.
Yeah, and that's either through getting better player skills or through having better business skills, right? Some need more of one, some need more than other. I'm curious, like, we talked many times about like kind of the business skills, right? And coming back to kind of your philosophy where you have to maximize a V, winning the most in the least amount of time, right? I think that was kind of your definition of the best poker player. How does this shape your decisions you make around the grind? So how does that mindset look in practice for you in, for example, things like game selection, how many games you play, how many hours you play, energy management, whatever comes up?
Okay, so for me, at first is like I have like a structure of, before playing, obviously, like where I'm going to play, what stakes I'm going to play. Like, like every single time I see it on my computer, I do the exact same thing. I open like 4 poker sites that I know I'm going to play. I'm going to scan all the lobbies. I'm going to see who are playing from like 510 up to like 50, 100 or even higher. I'm going to see everything that's going on. If I see a good spot, like immediately I will see it. But if not, I'm just going to scan everything, right? And I'm going to think about, okay, so what are my best options here, right? Like, it's not like I'm just going to play and battle, like see it and whatever, make profit. No, I'm going to, okay, so I have these 4 poker sites, which some are more demanding in terms of mental energy. Like, for example, I have like mental energy slots in my head, right? Like, I don't really enjoy playing more than 5 or 6 tables, for example. Even 4 or 5 sometimes, I'm just like too tired to do that. Like, I really enjoy playing like very sharp and focused on like less tables, unless obviously if it gets crazy good, like, yeah, I will go up, right? It's a very, so I'll try to understand like what are my best decisions by the time. So I will like start opening the games, right? Where I think I'm winning the most. If there's nothing going on, then okay, where are the sites where I maybe like the most profitable, waiting for, better games to open. Sometimes there's, like I said, players that are playing like 10 tables and they're willing to open heads up. I will play heads up versus them, and they don't mind. I'm fine with that. Like stuff like that. Like I will find the best spots, like in terms of, what's the most EV for me, given the situation that I am. So, and in terms of time zones, yes, like for me, it would be way more profitable to play during my nights, but I usually just play during the day. As I said, I usually play during one session in the morning or one session in the afternoon. If I do other stuff like surfing, like in the morning, then I will play in the afternoon. Or if I sometimes surf in the afternoon, I will play in the morning. Or if I don't have anything that is like more important than playing, I will not play, like sometimes if I have something like family wise or whatever, like I don't mind, like it's just like I will skip it, like I will prioritize something that's really important. Obviously, if it's something like whatever, like, okay, maybe I will skip it, but usually it's not like that.
How does like how long you're going to play, how does that shape the tables that you decide to join? Like I can imagine if you want to hop in a session for 2 hours, your game selection might be a little bit different than if you play for 8 hours, for example.
Yeah, definitely. So usually the start of my session, I don't mind, starting games like playing heads up 300s well in good spots, not only considering like the person I'm playing, but considering the future view of holding the table. Usually I do that for the first like hour or 45 minutes. Usually after that time, you get like already like some good games, whatever running, So I usually don't need that. But then if games start dying after half an hour or whatever, and I know I'm not really feeling like playing more, then I will not start games unless something pops up, like something like that. In terms of time, I usually aim at least half an hour. I think that's my cut, at least half an hour, because as I said, right, if I starting games like whatever, like, and I want to be profitable, I usually usually the first 30 minutes are like kind of mediocre, the first 45, and then in the next hour, once you get the good games, like your hour is way higher. So I obviously don't want to cut it before, So at least half an hour, but usually I play like around 2 hours. And then I feel it, like if I'm feeling tired of like, or sometimes I do feel motivated and I do grind sometimes 3 hours, sometimes even more, because I feel it, But if I don't, then I'll cut it. Or if I have something to do, I'll cut it. Or if I have to eat, I'll cut it, Usually I cut it, but, like something like that.
I heard you talk a couple times about like the opportunity cost. How does that shape your decisions around your grind or like your philosophy in poker in general?
Okay, so when I'm playing, right, like as I said, I play multiple sides. Maybe I have like 4 or 5 tables running, whatever, and yeah, I have like I have okay games, but I know that maybe like the 5th table, like it's already distracting me and it's like a lower stake game. I'll just close the table so I can focus on the 4 ones that I really want. Or, I'll just scan the games, like maybe still like open seat some games. But if I'm already playing 4 or 5 games and I'm open seating and someone wants to play me, then I will not play, like it's not an ego thing where like if someone seats me and like I will play for sure, like, okay, it's not the moment for me, right? Like I'm full, like I'm making a lot of money. Like I try to estimate like my hourly per table. Okay, so this table is like $80 per hour. This table is like 100. This table is 150. This table is whatever. And then I have this heads up where I don't even know if I'm winning. I'm like, it doesn't make any sense to me. And I don't know if I'm even winning, but also it's like, it's the game that is distracting me the most because I'm playing heads up, right? Versus 4 games where I should be focusing on winning the most. So I'll just not do that, And then maybe like if I close 1 game, then I will start playing, I don't know, 300, Or if I get like a really good seat at a higher stake game, maybe I'll just play 2 tables, 3 games, Just close the small stakes and I'll focus on that, Something like that goes along.
You talked earlier in the conversation that I think it was around 2023, 2024, big games were going, a lot of different games, which was part of how you kept engaged, right? You said, I play anti-side games, straddles, whatever. Part of how you kept, how you keep yourself engaged. I noticed also when you talked about this period, you talked about it with a lot of passion and energy. How do you go about times where maybe you don't feel as excited, right? Obviously, there's the external part. When the games are going, games are big, it's easier to get excited. But like one of the most important things in poker is to show up consistently, right? But it's impossible to always be motivated. So how do you personally go about remaining motivated? Maybe obviously right now, maybe it's not your priority, but how have you approached this part of poker throughout your career?
So I've gone through a lot of these like motivation issues, I would say, about like thinking like, oh, I don't feel like playing anymore. Especially like, for example, one of the crises was when the exclusive games on GT arrived. Like I was preparing myself a lot for the high stakes games, right? Like, I was just playing every day. I was swinging a lot. Like it was massive. I was swinging like 50K, 100K, I like up and down. Like I even was playing like a very big private game where I swing like $500,000. It was like absurd, right? Like obviously not all my action, but I had these like all these emotions and whatever, and then like once the exclusive games came, it was like I felt so frustrated because like what was available now was like just like so small in comparison, to what I was playing. Like I didn't even know if 1020 was like gonna run good or whatever. So I did feel like really disappointed in that spot, because also like I could play live or whatever, but I really don't enjoy much like the traveling a lot for a long time. It's also like, as I told you, like I enjoy being home with or like my place with my friend family. Just traveling to Vegas or whatever for a month is just, it's exciting for a week, but then the whole month is just like I'm over it. So just playing live, this feels just like not for me. I enjoy it for a while, but not really for a long. But then something that really helped me a lot was that this that I also mentioned at the start is the planification, the financial planification that I need in my life. It gave me like the clarity to know how much do I need and how much more work do I need, So I was like, now I'm not in doubt of like, how much money, if I need more or if I need less, or, all this stuff, or if I'm working for nothing. Because obviously once you reach to a point where like, I can win like a lot of money now and my day will be the same this day and the next month and everything will be the same, even if I win a lot, it doesn't matter. So you don't feel this rewarding as the start, but then once you have this like clarity of where you want to, what you need, it helps you like organize your time. It helps you organize like, like just the metrics, like how much more you need, how much more work you need. So I now feel motivated.
The decisions are easier, right? Decisions are made.
Yeah, I know I need to work for this a long time. If I want to keep working for like 4 more years or 5 more years, I know I need to work at least this amount of time, and it's fine. Like I'm gonna be happy doing it.
Let's say you arrive to that point. Would you stop poker completely?
I don't think so. Or like I think it's just gonna be different. I'll probably play more for fun. Less stress. Maybe play. I enjoy a lot of playing like live tournaments once in a while, like these big tournaments. I think it's very fun. Maybe I'll do like, I don't know. I stop thinking much about like EB and stuff. I'll just play sometimes. It might be different. I don't know, but I'm definitely gonna be playing less to get there. But you never know. Like maybe I will need more money by the top, or maybe I don't. I don't know. I'll see when it gets there. See what's up.
I will become an aggro fish. Just put players in spots all the time. You see, like, you go and play live, high stake, and then this guy that just sit down like, yeah, he sold some action. Let's put him to the test, max pressure all the time. That's probably what I would do.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know if I could do that. I'm not the kind of person that takes minor CB decisions, like even if it's like small money, what I'm saying? Like, unless it's, unless I know it's for fun, it's like regulated money. But, if I go play high stakes, like it's probably not like free money, what I'm saying? Like maybe in the lowest stake games, I will pump it off. Like sometimes, I'll pump it off on home games where I'm playing for like $20,
I think it's very hard for us to sort of retire and then when you play poker, not take it serious or not, like your brain starts to, you can't help it. Right? It's like, okay, am I really going to do this stupid thing? I get what you mean.
What I picture myself is kind of clear. I think I will just play 10 or up to 20% of my current volume, do more free stuff, keep playing, maybe cut the higher end, the one that, or maybe not. I don't know. Like, maybe it comes more opportunities, but I feel like the volume thing will just go down. Maybe, so like I really enjoy playing a lot of tournaments, especially live tournaments, but I just don't do it because it's just like whenever my mind thinks in EV, it's just like such a waste of time, money. Like, it's just like, it's just so expensive. And like the ROIs are so small. It's like, I could just do more play home. But then it's just like, like, I know I'm going to have fun for like one tournament, maybe two, but then I can't wrap my head around going and playing just one thing, So maybe I'll do that, maybe I'll just be a businessman and play private games as well. I don't know. It will be amazing.
We'll see.
It will be amazing.
You mentioned obviously that you mentioned very high swings, right? Swinging $500,000. So you've played in some very, very big games over your career. You also talked about like different types of games, maybe side games. What were some of the craziest or more fun games or formats that you've played throughout your career?
I would say a Squid game for sure. I played a JRB game in Bahamas. It was absurd. It was so fun. Like, it was so fun. We were playing like $100, $200, no limit meets with PLO rounds. I didn't know shit about PLO. I just learned it by the feel. Playing the higher stake games. We were playing a Squid with like $500 per Squid, even $1K per Squid. It was absurd. Like, it was fun. I do enjoy playing live, like these kind of like high stakes, and these kind of fun settings. Like I know I'm like gambling, right? Like especially when I'm playing PLO, like I know I'm fucking gambling, but I know overall the decision is just good and it's just fun, Like I'll take that. Like it's not like I'm just a fucking robot that's just always, like I'll gamble. I love gambling when it's fun and like it's in an
environment
setting
where everyone is gambling, right?
Yeah. I love it. I do enjoy it for sure. And yeah, I think that was the most exciting game I've ever played. It was for days, just like, round of Holden, round of PLO, just Squid, like, the progressive Squid, which is like absurd. As like just everyone going mad. It was just like, it was so fun. It was so fun. Obviously, I played private games in Vegas as well, which were like that as well. I would say that was like the most fun. Sure.
I can definitely relate. I almost feel like when I go play live, I'm sort of the recreational because why do recreationals go play live? They want to have fun. And when I play live, I also want to have fun. So bring on the side games, bring on the different things, Like, oh, interesting new game. Like I play some live here in Brazil as well, and they usually the games that run, they have like I said, well, Squid, Cucuruchu, I don't know what else what else they come up with. They also have Macaco. I don't know if you know that game, monkey game. I've only seen it here in Brazil. It's pretty fun. It's like basically for the people listening, it's sort of like Cucurucho, like sort of push fold, I think it's also called. But there's like a tent. The dealer get dealt card, right? There's the monkey. The monkey also get dealt card, and we all play collectively against the monkey. It's such a cool dynamic.
I mean, that's really bad, to be honest. That's like the worst EV game side game because it's really good for the house.
Like the dynamic, because like poker is you're always against each other. When Macaco is on, it's suddenly we're rooting for someone to win against the house, right? Because in order for the Macaco to go away, so basically what happens, everyone puts an ante in the pot, right? And then it just starts at the small blind. Basically, he's first to act. And in Macaco, you can actually do whatever you want. You can raise, right? It's a bit different. The hand always goes open and you play against the monkey, right? The Macaco. And then basically, if the Macaco wins, another round of antes go in and basically the Macaco stays. And at some point, if the Macaco has been there for like 5 rounds, everyone is like, guys, win, please. And then it's like we're all rooting for each other, which is very different than any poker game that I've played.
I've played that. The thing is, my brain is like always thinking of, okay, what's the catch here, right? The thing is like this guy is always all in, basically, right? The Macaco.
Yeah,
he's always realizing his equity versus people that will deny their own equity. It's like if you short stack in a game and you're always all in versus player who will have to play, you are the one actually destroying them because you get to realize 100% of the time your hand. That's absurd. You know what I'm saying? That's pretty absurd. And like, not even that, like just obviously Rake. So
yes, so
because I'm just being a nerd about it right now, but I know it's fun.
An important thing to mention, like it's not like when the monkey wins that the house takes the money. It stays at the monkey. It just doubles in the next hand, and then it doubles again, and then it doubles again. That's like the only thing I don't like about it. In my opinion, there should be a cap because I've played in a game where there's like an hour or 2 hours straight of Macaco because it kept on winning, and then it's like, get this game off. Like, it's fun, you know, for like a couple rounds to kind of mix up the vibe, have some camaraderie, you know, root for each other. And but other than that,
like when I play that, I never root for anyone. I'm like, I hope you lose so I can actually take the money in the next round.
no. I root for it. It's like, okay, I'm done with this monkey. Come on, bust him. Come on, let's go.
No, that game is like, yeah, I don't know, but I know. Like, I love the side games as well when I play live. I love, like, when I play live, I can't really play like normal Hold'em. Like, if I play regular Hold'em, no anti-game, I'll kill myself. Like, it's so boring. Like, it's so boring. Like, I'll actually even prefer to play even PLO, which I'm not that bad, and you know, but it's just like, it's so boring to play regular Hold'em. Even when
Squid
anti
makes
now,
it a lot better.
Yeah,
like, even if you want to play correct, you get to be enhanced. I almost, with Squid, it's always like, when I win the Squid, I'm like, fuck, I won the Squid. You know, it's like when I'm still left on one side, it's like, fuck, I need to win the Squid. But it's like, oh, wow, there's big, well, I can VPip 75%. No problem, let's go.
But it's in a Squid. I mean, it's not a stand-up, right? In a Squid, you actually get to win more buttons. You know what I'm saying?
Yes, true.
So it's actually like, and I mean, it's not the same as, you know, being in the, you know, allowed to pay, but it's just amazing, man. I really enjoy how that impacts the strategy and like overall the fun. You know, like that's something that I think I might be missing from online poker somehow. It's just like, you know, like it's really hard to get. I mean, at least for me, like this sort of excitement. Even if I'm playing high stakes, you know, I don't think I feel fun. I feel like focused. You know, like I need, you know, like hunting mode, you know, like actually like, you know, focusing on like, you know, taking the best decisions. But when I'm having these side games, I'm like, this is so great, you know, like I'm just enjoying it. Actually, like enjoying it.
I mean, we do see it a bit more, right, with bump bots and stuff like that. They're trying to, but like, in my opinion, you should just have tables. They're like fun game tables or something. And then on the right, you just have like a list of games. And when the majority of the players at the table have agreed on the game, that game runs. Something along those lines. It should be.
I think that should be. I mean, I know
you eliminate bots straight away.
I play some Squid games online, on private games, whatever. It just feels different now. It's different than in person.
Live is fun.
It's different than in person. But I know what you say. I would say also that normally like these side games are like incentive a lot of action, and the problem is that it also makes you pay a lot more rake in a sense, like obviously, right? So obviously in time rake tables, like it's not a problem, but once you're playing online and like, you know, you have a cap, or now most of the sites are increasing their caps. Like that. It's just like a massacre if you actually consider DB. Like, I don't know if I'm gonna be playing like multiple tables nowadays online. Like, you know, on regular. No, obviously there's really sites with really low rate that allow bump up, but you know what I'm saying? Like, all these like games that drive action and fun should be considered like. There should be a balance, I think, but I know that there's another conversation, but there should be a balance between like the fun and the rake, you know, like they should be considered because, you know, I don't think it's good right now.
So what, you know, if we talk about like online poker in the future of poker in general, right? What kind of things do you think should be done in order to keep it healthy or to improve it? Do you think we're heading in the right direction?
Obviously, in terms of ecology and stuff, like everyone wants to push for their own side, right? Like the poker sides want to win more money. Obviously, they want to keep it long term, but at the same time, they want to keep more money. The players want to win more. You know, it's always like pushing for their own. I think that there should be always a balance where like, I think the operators actually want to do sometimes the right thing, but they just don't know how. They're not informed on like what are the terms that needs to be existing in terms to be like, okay, you can profit, but then you can also like make the pros profit. You know what I'm saying? I think sometimes they work like in an unbalanced way where it's like really good for the pros because they make an accident. I'm not going to say the sites, but you know, like sometimes they don't even know what their rake is, and it's like, great, thank you. But then on other places, like they want to do the best, and then they screw it up because they don't know how the cap impacts or the fun games or whatever. So maybe hire a specialist, in terms of like impact of this kind of, how Rake impacts the games, just like that. It's just as simple as that. I think it's something that most players in cash games sometimes don't really think about it. It's one of the main things. Like whenever you run sims or whatever, like Rake is, just cuts the fun, but there should be ways to find a balance, I'll say.
Yeah, it's like that's actually what I like about live as well. And if in my opinion, they should be able to do this online as well, right? Just do like sort of time Drake in a way while you play X amount of hands, play X amount of money to have played that hand, but don't take it out of the pot because the game becomes more fun if you don't take it out of the pot. We get to play more hands, there's more action. Recreationals like more action, right? That's why there's side games. So it's win for everyone, right?
Yeah, I think it's just harder for them to know what's the because that
will
be
changed. Like, no, we always just rake from the pot. It's easier. Like now
that's all.
They have to think.
Yeah, exactly. So, but then I think there should be a way to like. I don't know. I think the time Drake is like one of the best options. I really like. I don't want to name sites, but I really like some of the stuff that's happening currently. But I have hope, though. I have hope. I think that, for example, Coin Poker now has like, I don't think they're doing the right way, but I think they wanted to do it the right. I think there might be, but anyways, like I think in poker, like if people ask me if I think I'm never not gonna be profitable from playing online or whatever, it's just like I'm gonna find a way. Like there's always gonna be really bad players. Maybe I will have to play less volume. Maybe I will have to game select more. I don't know. It just sucks, to be honest. Maybe I have to play better. I don't know, but he just sucks in general for the average player,
There's always a way, right? And the kind of the takeaway from that is that you have to remain, what's the word? Malleable? You have to remain adaptable, right?
It's usually
the way you are making EV now might not be the way you make it in the future. So
I mean, I play very different ranges basically on every side I play. Like because everywhere has like different ranges. It's great. I mean, obviously I don't know precisely everything, but I kind of so you can do something about it. But yeah, obviously about the fun part, it's just the higher the rate, it just kills the fun. Like for example, right now I'm loving the double board bomb pot on coin. I love it. Like I actually love it. Like I just want to play the double board bomb pots every single time, But then when the rate comes, I don't know if I will ever play it, But I have only like one more day to play it. I don't know.
You spent a dead day to do this podcast with us. Much appreciated, man.
Yeah. But yeah, I would love to see something like that with the squids as well, in jail. Just more fun, I think it would be a new revolution to poker.
More fun in poker, yeah. I think that's a win-win for everyone. Are you grinding hard, studying solvers, reviewing hands, but still not getting those results that you're capable of? You're putting in the time and effort, but without clear direction, that effort does not pay off. That is why I created the Mechanics Leak Buster program, which is the exact system I use to make over 7 figures playing online poker and have since taught to hundreds of students so they could do the same. Through our Leak Finder stats and pop-ups, you will gain clarity on your biggest leaks and tendencies, insights on how your strategies have been performing in-game, and the impact variance has had on your results. But knowing your stats is only the beginning. In the program, we dig deep into the root causes behind your leaks and tendencies and use a proven 7-step system to fix them for good and gain the skills to improve and continuously evolve as a poker player. You'll study more effectively, overcome leaks and tendencies that felt impossible to break, and rebuild trust and confidence in your game, finally seeing your hard work pay off as you move up the stakes. So if you're ready to stop guessing and start improving with clarity, break through the patterns that have been holding you back, and take your game to the next level, join the Mechanics Leak Buster program using the link down below.
All right, I'd like to do a little bit of reflecting, looking back on your poker career, some lessons and something we can extrapolate from that. What was the toughest period of your poker career?
I would say just recently, the past 2 years. Well, not the past, but 2 years ago, maybe 2024, mid-end. I think when the rush of playing high kind of ended and whatever, and then I started already like realizing, the health struggles, and actually open my eyes to like, okay, maybe I need to stop taking pills for everything, maybe taking pills for my gastritis or my to sleep. I had like 3 pills, but it was just insane. Maybe I need to start, doing something different. Obviously, the process was like kind of hard, right? Like start stopping that, changing the habits, maybe start cutting some stuff, learn something new, do something new. It's just like, in terms of just poker, I think I was always privileged, to be honest. I've never had like a really downswing in a sense, I would say. Maybe that's one of the benefits why of game selecting. Like I honestly didn't even have like a proper downswing in my life, I would say. Like something I would say, oh fuck, I feel too bad. Not really. But I think that, like the health things, maybe also the motivation issues at the start of my career. Like maybe during COVID, I was just playing, and then I got like this weird thing where I was traveling through Argentina, and then I got the airports locked, and I had to stay there for like 6 months alone, basically, maybe 7 months. I can't remember. It was really like sad for me to just being alone, being there with no one, just playing poker, and it felt pretty empty, that the period was pretty sad. But yeah, I think that it was more like motivation mentally things, I would say. That was my biggest struggles in poker.
During that 7 months by yourself, what kept you going? What was kind of the driver, your mindset during that period? What do you rely on there?
So it was really bad. Like the first 2 months, it was like COVID poker was amazing, right? For everyone, like everyone was playing online, things were thriving. I was just playing a lot. I had nothing else to do. It was just playing, winning a lot. I had like, by the time my best months, the consecutive, it was like amazing, everything was great. I was just introduced to like poker apps and whatever. It was just great by the time. But then just felt really demotivated for a while. Like it just like felt like the money didn't make anything. I was starting to feel the insomnia, it all started there. Like the stomach issues, everything started, to notice. I think that was there. And then I think I was just playing video games for months, doing absolutely nothing with my life, just eating and playing video games all day. I was pretty depressed, I would say. I don't know if I had something that kept me, motivated in a while. Which is like, it all came back to me once I get back to Peru, get to my routine, see my friends, my family, see that I was like, screwed, and started, getting recovered from that, and that's when I started actually my stable to help, the other players. That also gave me like a boost, to have other players to connect, to teach, it feels really rewarding also, to teach people, give them the skills, actually know that you're changing their lives to something good.
It sounds like this period had a really big impact on you in terms of the life you don't want to live, in isolation, by yourself, making money, with no other kind of outlets. So for you, it feels like when you came back to Peru, you kind of corrected that in terms of more connections, starting a stable. And yeah, I think sometimes when we go for a tough period, I think sometimes it's good just to realize that this kind of teaches us lessons about ourselves and what we don't want going forward, the life we're not willing to accept or to step into. So it sounds like for you, although it wasn't a nice period, it definitely felt like it sent you in a different direction to correct that.
Yeah, for sure. And also like, being alone for so long, just like it was something new to me. It was very young as well, but I learned a lot. And it definitely gave me this idea, right? I came with the idea, okay, I need to start seeing my friends now, being social, right? Like stuff like that. Definitely shift my mindset. Obviously, I kept pushing a lot on poker from there, right? But it was very natural, right? Like, I was still like very young. I had all these like more to do. But I think that's where it all starts, I would say.
Any good things you learned about yourself in the solitude, just being alone?
Small stuff, I would say. Like, I started appreciating time offline. Being off the laptop, being off the computer, being off my cell phone. It was something that before it was not really appreciated, because I actually had natural time offline, which but then after that, I realized, fuck, I'm like all day, I'm just screening and I feel even tired, like I feel weird, like even engaging conversations was like weird for some reason. Like I was actually becoming more like everything became like, different. So I would say the social aspect helped me like to understand how important that was to me.
Yeah, I think we all went through a little bit of our own version of a bit more isolated, a bit more introverted, not socializing as much. I know for myself, when I started meeting up with friends after 2 or 3 years, I was in Bali, didn't see many people during that period, and then I felt a bit nervous, a bit social anxiety around people I know very well. So it was just a period of realizing, wait a second, we're not meant to be cooped up by ourselves, we're meant to be interacting, we're meant to be social with people. So yeah, I think it's a good reminder of what's important to us, and yeah, the things we want to gravitate towards. And for you, it feels like it had not a good impact at the time, but after that, it feels like it stemmed a lot of your future decisions. In terms of looking back on your career so far, any moments you're most proud of, any periods of your career you're like, that was a moment or a period that I'm really, really glad I did?
Well, my poker career, I think I really loved just playing the high stakes online. By the time I was also like, I went to Vegas during the WSOP, I will be playing in Bellagio, like the high stakes games, there was a lot of public games, like I'll be playing like with the best online, that's where I met a lot of the high stakes regs where I would say friends or like well known now, playing like 100, 200 live. It was just like, like it was a dream, in Bobby's room, like, a lot, like it was just a dream, like all the setting, staying in the hotel. It was pretty surreal, just like being on the 5 stars hotel, just hitting the gym in the morning. Well, like being on the pool and then grinding all day, just high stakes. It was fun. I would say. I think it was like a really pinnacle of like, everything. I obviously felt very like confident on my game by the time, right? I pushed from like playing like, I would say mainly mid stakes to like actually be playing high stakes. And, when you play live, there's another feeling, like, so everything felt like really great there. Also, yeah, I would say that. I also played I don't know if you guys know, I played the Triton Invitational once. I've played it as a VIP. That was nice. That was really nice. Yeah, it was just proper fun playing like for a lot of money, right? But then, yeah, that again, like that's about poker career, right? But then you realize like it was fun for a while, and then it was like on my room, and it was like, fuck, I wish I was home, I wish I was like, even though it was a good day or whatever, it was thrilling, and then I was like, I don't know, like it felt incomplete. You know what I'm saying? Like it felt like I was maybe pursuing something that maybe was not for me by the time, or maybe I had to try it, just to see what actually worked for me.
Yeah, I like that analogy. I think it's probably the correct assumption to think that maybe you had to experience it to figure out if it was for you or wasn't. And you mentioned like it was a peak for a while. For a few weeks, you were actually loving it, living the dream. And after a while, you're like, actually, maybe this isn't what I want. Maybe it's not the fulfillment that I was seeking from this pursuit. But yeah, I think every time you have a desire, a strong goal to do something, just go and achieve it. Just go pursue that goal, see where it ends up. Maybe it's a hollow pursuit, you get nothing from it, but at least you know. I think a lot of times we debate, thinking, I wish I had this, I wish I had that. Just go experience it. Find it for yourself. We don't know. Maybe you find Bobby's room is the pinnacle of your life, and you don't want to leave that room forever. And you're there for 20 years, and you're an old school rag at 80, just cleaning up all the youngsters. But yeah, I think for yourself, it's just good to experience those things and just be able to tell the story as well. Like you did what you wanted to do. You set out to do it. Maybe not getting that long-term fulfillment, but it's still a peak experience that you look back on fondly. And you go, yes, I was in Bobby's room, living at Bellagio for a while, and what a great story to be able to tell looking back as well.
Yeah,
all right, this is your career. What actually motivates you? And I know we're talking about this life balance, talking about poker being a fun game. What motivates you to grind at the moment? What's the kind of drivers?
You're talking about right now?
Right now, today. Apart from the Rake-free coin poker, what's really driving you today?
I know we'll probably talk about it a lot, but it's just like, it feels good to like, obviously the financial part, which I said, I still know I need to work something like, I still need to work to get to the point where I need or what I want to be in my life to provide for the ones I love and everything I want. But also there's a feeling of accomplishment once you do something, you're good, like as a human being. Yeah. Like everyone likes to, do something they are, you're good, like, so I like the motivation of feeling like, you know, good at something, like, you know, like useful, you know, like I can teach, I can change lives, you know, there's a lot of rewarding, like not only about the money wise, but it's also like, you know, I feel the fulfillment of like being great at something and also helping other people to change their life to be also, you know, accomplishing what they want. So I would say that's my main drive then.
Do you still feel like at this stage of your life, poker is a vehicle for growth? You still feel like you're evolving, learning about yourself, learning about poker at this stage?
Well, I'm still studying most days. It's just like, in terms of growth, I just don't know what else to play. You know, like in terms of to fit my schedule, you know, like maybe if there's an opportunity to constantly play that fits my schedule, you know, I mean, there's obviously games I could play in private, but you know, there's always like this struggle where if you get invited to play an online game or private, you need to be there. They want you to be there, you know, when it runs, you know, you kind of need to keep accountable. It's just like my life is like, sometimes I don't want to play for a few days because I want to go to the beach or I want to travel. I just don't want to play today. Maybe there's a great game and the guy who invited me is pushing me and I don't want to play, man. Sorry. Like, you know, it's a great game. Good for you. I don't want to play. So I would say like in terms of like playing higher, maybe like obviously when I get better, I get more confident to play like tougher games as well. And that's also like the way I see it. Maybe I don't think I mentioned it when we were talking about the game selection stuff. Once I see like the way I see getting better at poker is that it allows you not to beat the other player, but to be in more profitable spots, you know, like play higher stakes, being, you know, stand yourself versus like the best, you know, or actually get to beat other players who you thought they were great, but now you don't see them as great, you know, because you're better. So now you can actually play them heads up or 300 and, you know, all this stuff. But I don't know right now in terms of like growth as well, you know, in terms of poker, because my priorities right now, I would say are more aligned with like sustaining what I already achieved and I'm doing and minimizing cortisol. That's all.
Yeah, you come across as someone who's living life on their own terms, living very freely in the moment while still pursuing your kind of longer term goals to set yourself up for life. And yeah, I think it's a really refreshing conversation where a lot of times we have conversations which are a bit more imbalanced in terms of pursuing poker at all costs. It's nice to have someone who's playing poker at a high level, but also really thinking about the life that they want to live and living it as they want to. So for yourself, in terms of this conversation, what would you like the main takeaway to be for our listeners who've listened to this?
I would say that thing about poker was already in the business way. Maybe it's not the fun way or the most proud way of seeing it in terms of ego, right? But if you actually see it as a way of like, why do you play poker? Is if you play professionally, it's to work. In like, you know, you mainly want to make the most of it. You know, the more money. Obviously, sometimes to make the most money, you have to lock in and study and, you know, like play, you know, battle, get the motivation. It's part of it, but it's not only that, you know. So I would say maybe shift that into like a way, okay, so what do I want from this? You know, try to see it, yeah, in a business way, right? Like what are the times I want to play? Who do I want to play or what games I want to play, you know, you know, what are the, you know, all these like variables just get better, but it's not the only thing I would say to consider, right? Like you may always win the most, period.
What a great way to wrap it up. Thank you so much for your time today, Yoshi. Really appreciate it.
It was a nice chat as well.
Thank you very much, Yoshi. What a great conversation that was. Adam, any main takeaways for you during this convo?
Yeah, I very much enjoyed this one, and I love that we started very deep on health. Obviously for Yoshi, it was more of a kind of reaction to his health problems that he was having at one point, the chronic stress that caused him to go down that path. But it opened the doorway to a really nice conversation that hopefully the listeners can reflect on as well in terms of how you're making decisions around your health, the trade-offs you're making to progress your career, and when those trade-offs, the short-term trade-offs, often trying to make money in the short term, come at the cost of your health, how to start to recalibrate those, how to start to think long-term. I think Yoshi was a really good example of someone who's really thought about his life and the life he wants to live, and now prioritizing health, feeling good, is kind of the holy grail, or the number one priority for him, which then leads him to life EV. I like that analogy as well, in terms of you're not just a poker player, you're living a life. You've got to optimize for the life you want to live, not just one direction or one path. So for him, it was like trying to create more balance. Surfing that he loves, that gets him in this flow state, gets him in this kind of presence. He mentioned time in nature, sports, time with friends, as well as being a high stakes poker player. And I think sometimes we can kind of kid ourselves and think we can't have that kind of balance because there's a trade-off between, I need to do this, but I haven't got the time. And I think Yoshi was a really good example of, you can create the life you want. If you want to go all in poker and sacrifice other things, great. Maybe at some point you'll rebalance. Maybe something you want. But yeah, trying to think of your life in terms of life EV. And to do this, we talked a lot about kind of knowing yourself, the importance of knowing what's important for you. Now, I've done a lot of work on values and work with other players on their values. They do change as you go through life. Like maybe your value now is growth and achievement. In the future, it becomes more health, family, relationships. But you have seasons where they stay very static. Your values, once you know yourself in that moment, you can always kind of tap into, right now, these are my 3 to 5 highest values. Am I optimizing for them? If you're being honest with yourself, I think a lot of people they'll sacrifice things that are more important for things that are less important. By that, I mean they'll sacrifice health, relationships, family for money. And then when they get the money, like, actually give me some of that family stuff and health stuff back. So just think for yourself, spend some time reflecting on where you might be a bit out of balance and what you'd have to do to correct that, which then leads into the final one, that short-term performance almost always increases when you prioritize your health more. So again, the trade-off that we're trying to make is we're thinking that the long-term, we're going to health benefits long-term, but I think health benefits short-term. If you look after yourself, you feel good, you feel happy. Yoshi said the best year of his career at that moment was when he started prioritizing health. He had the biggest upswing of his career, and that's quite common in terms of you feel happier, you're more present, you're more intuitive, you feel good when you're grinding when you want to. All these things are going to drive short-term performance. So if you can't motivate yourself from the health angle, motivate yourself from the performance angle, you will play better poker, you will make more money, you will get to your goals quicker. It's almost like having one foot on the accelerator, one foot on the brake right now when you're not looking after your health. Just take the foot off the brake, full accelerator, learn to enjoy the process. And I think that the lessons that Yoshi's kind of reflecting on there is definitely about optimizing health, performance, but also having a life that you enjoy on that journey. How about yourself, Rene? What are the main takeaways for you?
Yeah, a topic that kept on coming back was obviously the way he thinks about EV, right? Obviously on the macro scale, right? EV in terms of his life, but on a micro scale in poker, he labeled like the best player is the guy who wins the most with the least amount of time, right? Least amount of work wins the most amount of money. And he tries to optimize everything around that. Another topic that kept on coming back was approaching poker like a business, right? He said you have the guys who want to battle and constantly get better, and you have the guys who treat poker more like a business. And kind of like the game selection, for example, was part of that. Now, it wasn't as static, right? Oh, we have the bomb hunters and the guys who only want to get better and only want to battle. I think I asked him, like, how do you find the balance? And he says, yeah, it goes through seasons. I think he also said he has periods where he plays mainly on a site where he can track his data, and for the 2 months he battles a bit more, tries to sharpen up his game before he tries to prioritize quote easier money, right? Same in terms of, I think also this relates to where you are in your career. For example, if you have the option to play on a very soft site, but you cannot track, well, if you're not very strong yet as a poker player, maybe it's better if you play on a track side that's maybe a little bit harder. But at that moment of your career, it's important to lay the foundations about your game. And in order to get better, you need to gather information about your game. That's kind of also what he said. Just in a period where he doesn't really feel happy about his game, that's kind of where he falls back to. Also, a threat of only bomb hunting, right, is that kind of the necessity is lower. And he said, well, I keep the necessity high because I play a variety of games, right? So that kind of keeps him challenged for himself. I think that was a very good one as well. Also, another actually reason why he said in terms of getting better, he said getting better should always remain a more important skill, because if you think about it, if we want a game selecting good games, beatable games, well, the better you get, the more games get beatable, right? So suddenly a player can become a fish that you didn't think was a fish before. But as your skill grows, you now see things that you didn't maybe see before. So if the game is profitable, it's always relative to your skill. So if you're the best player in the world, every game is profitable. So you need little game selection. So that was another reason why obviously that was very important. We talked a lot about trust and intuition as well. And these are skills that that have to be earned, right? When he said intuition, he mentioned solver work, MDA, like 6 years of studying a lot. Now he can trust his intuition, and it kind of all comes together. But trust can be practiced. I think we talked about, when we talked about hand reading, if you keep on practicing it, and for example, you can do this by replaying hands, or you keep on trying to put people on hands, you get better at the skill. And when trust grows, you notice that your decisions become smoother, easier. It becomes less random. There's less random thoughts. There's less clutter, because your intuition and your trust in your ability to, for example, put your opponent on the correct range will become better, and therefore decisions will become easier. And he actually mentioned it twice, that I think with the coach that he worked with, he said that coach never opened the solver. And I was like, whoa, that's interesting, right? But that's because the coach was constantly looking outwards, like, okay, what's the information I'm getting? He's was constantly hand reading, right? And that was a skill we talked about a lot. And he mentioned in the end as well, I think the most important skill at high stakes, he said range narrowing, right? So being able to range people down. Now, in order to do that, we have to start looking outwards. There was a very big topic actually that was in the podcast we did with Raoul Mester as well. Start looking outward, right? And it's partly a habit. You start with a range preflop and you start narrowing it down. When you start to train yourself in that decision-making process and you start to train yourself with that habit of trying to put people on hands, you will get better at it, right? And then I think he agreed with the philosophy that I had around this. Well, if you know someone's hand, the decision is always easy. So most of your time should be spent in trying to figure out what your opponent's hand is, right? So that's kind of what were kind of my takeaways of this conversation. Great one. So I want to thank Yoshi again for coming on and sharing his wisdom. I want to thank Adam for co-hosting this podcast. I want to thank our sponsors, SnapMDA, GTO Wizard, Coin Poker. Go check them out. I want to thank you guys for making it all the way to the end. If you like this podcast, hit the like button, hit that subscribe button as well, so you don't miss the next episode. And I will see you in that one.